We're live.
So, welcome to this 80th session of Grounded Voices, which is being organized by NAPM, the National Alliance for People's Movements. And over the last 80 weeks, we've been exploring and talking about different issues. Today, we have a very special session where we will actually be talking about oversight bodies, whether these have been set up under specific laws or these are constitutional bodies, but essentially bodies that have been set up to protect specific rights of people. And what we'll be discussing today is really how have these bodies been functioning? Have they been functioning as envisaged, as protectors of people's rights, as keeping and acting as a counterbalance to any excess by the executive? Have they really been holding the government to task and taking and ensuring its accountability whenever there are violations of those specific rights? Or, as we've recently been reading somewhat concerningly, have some of these institutions become, in a sense, more functioning as almost departments of executives, often not only not challenging the executive when there are excesses, but actually being a part of that process? We've read with concern about issues related to appointments to some of these commissions. I was reading one article which actually said they termed it as it's become a retirement house for pliant people. So is that an issue of concern? And today we are joined by an absolutely fantastic panel. All four of our speakers are experts in their domain and have spent years monitoring and leading the struggle of ensuring that these specific institutions are actually, up to the task for which they were set up. Because this session is bilingual, I'll now be speaking briefly in Hindi and then I'll be introducing the panel. आप सबका आज बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। आज की जो हमारी ये श्रृंखला है जमीनी आवाजें, आज इसका 80 सेशन है, सेशन नंबर 80 है आज इसका। और इतने सारे हफ्तों से हमने कई मुद्दों पे बात की और महीने के आखिरी सप्ताह में हम हमेशा पारदर्शिता या जवाबदेही का कुछ मुद्दा उठाते हैं। और इस बार का हमारा एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दा हमने उठाया है, वो है कि जो ये स्वतंत्र आयोग या संस्थान बनाए गए हैं, चाहे वो संविधान के तहत बनाए हो या चाहे वो किसी कानून के तहत बनाए गए हो, वो किस प्रकार से अपना कामकाज कर रहे हैं? क्या वो उस प्रकार से अपना कामकाज कर रहे हैं जिसके लिए उनको बनाया गया था? क्या वो असली में सरकार की जवाबदेही तय कर रहे हैं? जब कहीं पर भी लोगों के अधिकारों का उल्लंघन होता है तो क्या वो खड़े होके लोगों की आवाज बनते हैं? क्या जब जरूरत पड़ती है तो सरकार से वो सख्त सवाल पूछ पाते हैं? और क्या जब समय आता है तो क्या वो सरकार के खिलाफ जो भी उनके ताकत है, चाहे पेनल्टी का पावर हो, चाहे किसी तरीके का आदेश देने का उनकी ताकत हो, क्या वो इसको असल में कर रहे हैं? आज हम 4 प्रमुख तौर से आयोगों की बात करेंगे और अगले महीने हम इसी प्रकार से कुछ और भी आयोगों को उठाएंगे। लेकिन आज जो हम 4 प्रमुख आयोग उठा रहे हैं उसमें सबसे पहला है राष्ट्रीय महिला आयोग, जो कि नेशनल कमीशन फॉर वुमेन है। दूसरा है राष्ट्रीय अनुसूचित जाति आयोग, नेशनल कमीशन फॉर शेड्यूल्ड कास्ट। तीसरा है राष्ट्रीय मानव अधिकार आयोग, नेशनल ह्यूमन राइट्स कमीशन। और चौथा है जो हमारे सूचना आयोग बने हैं सूचना के अधिकार कानून के तहत, इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन सेट अप अंडर द RTI एक्ट। और हम अपने प्रवक्ताओं से सवाल ये पूछेंगे कि क्या ये आयोग वो काम कर रहे हैं जिसके लिए इन्हें बनाया गया था, या क्या आज ये आयोग एक तरीके से कमजोर होके सरकार के एक विभाग की तरह काम कर रहे हैं और ना कि एक स्वतंत्र आयोग की तरह काम कर रहे हैं। अभी हाल ही में मैं एक आर्टिकल पढ़ रही थी जिसमें एक टर्म इस्तेमाल किया था कि ये आयोग तो ऐसे रिटायरमेंट होम्स बन गए हैं उन लोगों के लिए जो सरकार की तरफ की बातें करते हैं और एक तरीके से अपने आप को सरकार से स्वतंत्र नहीं रखते। तो क्या आपका भी मानना ये है इन आयोगों को लेकर? और जो मेरा आखिरी सवाल रहेगा हमारे सारे प्रवक्ताओं से वो ये रहेगा कि अगर हमें इन आयोगों को वापस वही, हम चाहते हैं कि वो वही काम करें जिसके लिए उनको बनाया गया था, तो उसके लिए क्या जरूरी है। मैं अब अपने चारों प्रवक्ताओं का आपके साथ परिचय कराऊंगी। हमारे साथ सबसे पहले जुड़ी हैं अंजलि भारद्वाज। अंजलि नेशनल कैंपेन फॉर पीपल्स राइट टू इंफॉर्मेशन की को कन्वीनर है और सतर्क नागरिक संगठन की फाउंडिंग मेंबर। आप बहुत सालों से सूचना के अधिकार मुहिम के साथ जुड़ी हुई हैं और अभी हाल ही में आपको एक अंतर्राष्ट्रीय पुरस्कार एंटी करप्शन चैंपियंस से भी संबोधित किया गया था। आप सूचना के अधिकार कानून, लोकपाल, भ्रष्टाचार, विसल ब्लोअर प्रोटेक्शन, शिकायत निवारण, इन सभी मुद्दों से जुड़ी हुई हैं बहुत बहुत सालों से। आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है अंजलि। और हमें पता है कि आप सूचना आयोगों पे भी एक सख्त नजर रखती हैं और सतर्क नागरिक संगठन इनके ऊपर हर वर्ष एक रिपोर्ट कार्ड भी निकालता है कि इनका फंक्शनिंग कैसा चल रहा है। हमारे साथ जो दूसरे प्रवक्ता जुड़े हैं, हेनरी टिफांगे। हेनरी, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। हेनरी राष्ट्रीय सचिव हैं ह्यूमन राइट्स डिफेंडर्स अलर्ट इंडिया से। देश भर में कहीं पे भी जब भी मानवाधिकार के जो सिपाही हैं उनके ऊपर किसी भी प्रकार का अटैक होता है तो सबसे पहले हम सबको ह्यूमन राइट्स डिफेंडर्स अलर्ट की ओर से ही सूचना मिलती है कि इस प्रकार से यहाँ पे ऐसा एक इंसिडेंट हुआ है। हेनरी एक क्रिमिनल लॉ में इनका बहुत एक्सटेंसिव एक्सपीरियंस है और वो पीपल्स वॉच से भी एसोसिएटेड है जो कि एक ह्यूमन राइट्स ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है। साथ ही में हेनरी ने पूरे देश भर में एक ऐसा ढांचा खड़ा किया हुआ है जो कि राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर और राज्य स्तर पर मानवाधिकार आयोगों के कामकाज पे एक सख्त नजर रखता है और वो कैसा काम कर रहे हैं वो केवल हम सबको नहीं बताते लेकिन विश्व भर में उस जानकारी को पहुंचाते हैं। तो आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है हेनरी। हमारे साथ जो तीसरी वक्ता जुड़ी हैं, मनी चंदर। मनी जी, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। मनी एक वकील हैं जो कि क्वालिफाइड है न्यूयॉर्क अमेरिका में भी और इंडिया में भी। इस समय वो मैनेजिंग पार्टनर हैं क्लिंच लीगल पे और उनका जो स्पेशल इंटरेस्ट रहता है वो रहता है महिला अधिकारों, जेंडर जस्टिस के मुद्दों पे। अगर आप उनका गूगल करके उनके आर्टिकल्स पढ़ेंगे तो उन्होंने बहुत ही विस्तार से इन सब मुद्दों पे लिखा हुआ है और खास करके राष्ट्रीय महिला आयोग के बारे में भी उन्होंने खूब विस्तार से लिखा हुआ है कि किस प्रकार से वो काम कर रहे हैं। तो आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है मनी। और हमारी चौथी प्रवक्ता आज की हैं बीना पालेकर। बीना है राष्ट्रीय सचिव नेशनल कैंपेन ऑन दलित ह्यूमन राइट्स की। वो पिछले 12 सालों से ज्यादा ये काम कर रही हैं कि जो हमारे बजट तय किए जाते हैं राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर और राज्य स्तर पे उसमें SC/ST का कंपोनेंट किस प्रकार से इस्तेमाल हो रहा है। हम हर साल उनकी रिपोर्टें पढ़ते हैं कि किस प्रकार से कभी कभी जो बजट एयरमार्क होता है अनुसूचित जाति के लिए वो कभी तो CWG गेमों में लग जाता है और कभी सड़क के निर्माण में लग जाता है। और खास करके उनका भी एक फोकस रहा है कि स्पेशली जो राष्ट्रीय अनुसूचित जाति आयोग है वो किस प्रकार से काम कर रहा है। तो आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है बीना। Briefly to introduce our speakers in English for those for non-Hindi speaking audience, we are joined today by Anjali Bhardwaj. She is the co-convenor for the National Campaign for People's Right to Information and has been at the forefront of the right to information movement for the last 2 decades. She was recently felicitated by the Global Anti-Corruption Champions Award, and her work focuses on issues of transparency and anti-corruption. And she's been deeply engaged with the work of monitoring the performance of information commissions all across the country. It's lovely to have you on board, Anjali, today. We are also joined by Henri Tiphagne. Henri is one of the leading lights on issues of human rights in India. He is the National Working Secretary of Human Rights Defenders Alert. He's also been associated with People's Watch, which is a national level human rights organization. And he has been instrumental in actually setting up a national network which engages itself in monitoring the functioning of various national and state human rights institutions in the country. Our thanks and welcome to you, Henri. We are also extremely pleased to be joined by Mani Chander today. Mani is a dual qualified lawyer licensed to practice in New York. United States as well as in India. She's the managing partner at Clinch Legal and holds a special interest in issues of gender justice, public policy, and politics. She writes extensively on key legal issues, particularly gender crimes and women's rights, for various leading platforms. In fact, if you Google her name, you'll find she's done very in-depth work on the performance of the National Commission for Women, which we'll also be hearing about from her today. And we're also very, very happy to be joined by Beena, who is the General Secretary of the National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights. She has been deeply engaged on issues of public policy, governance, and budgets for the last 12 years. And it's thanks to extensive reports by the campaigns that she's engaged with that we actually know how budgets and money allocated under the sub-plans has actually been diverted for other uses. They've also been keeping a watch on how the National Commission for Scheduled Castes has been performing. So absolutely fantastic panel, and we are very excited to have all of you with us. And we will be hearing from each of you on the particular commission and the sector that you have been deeply engaged with. Just to briefly, I've already spoken about the importance of these institutions, but just to briefly also, perhaps it would be most interesting to hear from each of you a little bit about what could be the potential if these institutions were actually functioning properly. Maybe you could highlight it with some instances of the past or something in the present. And of course, we'd love to hear from you a commentary on whether it is this particular regime that has been at the forefront of compromising these institutions, or has the decline happened over a period of time? And talk to us about the nature of the decline. Is it over the issues of appointments? Is it about the commissions not having adequate powers? Or is it something else that you'd like to focus on? तो आज हम चारों प्रवक्ताओं से सुनेंगे उस पर्टिकुलर आयोग के बारे में जिसमें उनका सबसे ज्यादा काम रहा है, और हम ये भी सुनना चाहेंगे अपने प्रवक्ताओं से कि यदि ये आयोग और ये संस्थान सही से काम करें तो वो लोगों की किस प्रकार से मदद कर सकते हैं। यदि आपको इसमें उदाहरण देके हमें बताना चाहे तो जरूर बताएं, और ये भी आप हमसे बात रखें कि क्या ये जो एक चिंता है इन आयोगों को लेके, एक तरीके से आजकल की जो चिंता बनी हुई है कि क्या ये काम सही से कर रहे हैं, कि क्या ये सरकार को जवाबदेह बनाने से थोड़ा मुकर रहे हैं, क्या ये एक ऐसी चीज है जो पिछले कुछ सालों में हुई है, या फिर क्या ये शुरू से ही एक ट्रेंड बना हुआ है, एक डिक्लाइन चल रहा है, और क्या प्रमुख मुद्दे हैं जिसके ऊपर की ये कॉम्प्रोमाइज होता है? क्या ये नियुक्ति के कारण होता है, या क्या ये इसलिए होता है क्योंकि इन आयोगों के पास ताकत नहीं है? तो इन सभी मुद्दों पे आप अपनी जरूर बात रखें। और सबसे पहले मैं बुलाना चाहूंगी अंजलि जी को, और अंजलि जी आपसे रिक्वेस्ट है कि यदि आप इन सब मुद्दों को सूचना आयोगों के परिप्रेक्ष्य में रखें। हमें पता है कि सूचना आयोग सूचना के अधिकार कानून के तहत बनाए गए हैं एक तरीके से सेफ गार्ड करने के लिए हमारा राइट टू इंफॉर्मेशन। सो आई फर्स्ट इनवाइट अंजलि भारद्वाज to talk to us about the functioning of information commissions and to also comment on whether these are today watchdogs or lapdogs, as our title wants our commentators to talk to us in that context. And the floor is yours, Anjali, for the next 18 to 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, NAPM, for organizing grounded voices and doing it so consistently through these long months and years that you have brought all of us together for many discussions on various issues, varied issues, but very important issues. I wanted to just check what would be better. Would you like me to speak in English or in Hindi if there is any particular preference?
You can speak in either one language, and I'll provide a gist in the other language.
All right, तो मैं हिंदी में बात रखती हूँ अपनी। सूचना का अधिकार कानून हमारे देश में एक राष्ट्रीय स्तर पे 2005 में आया, लेकिन उससे पहले 9 राज्यों में ये कानून राज्य स्तर पे लागू हुए थे। दिल्ली, मध्य प्रदेश, तमिलनाडु, गोवा, राजस्थान, ऐसे राज्यों के अंदर 9 राज्यों में कानून थे। और ये जो कानून आया, ये किसी सरकार ने अपनी खुशी से अपने खुद ब खुद नहीं दिया। ये एक लंबा मुहिम चला जिसमें पूरे देश से लोग जुड़े और उन्होंने ये डिमांड किया कि हमें सूचना के अधिकार का कानून चाहिए। इसके बावजूद कि हमारे संविधान में लिखा है कि हमें बोलने की और अभिव्यक्ति की आजादी है। आर्टिकल 19 जो है हमारे देश के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का, वो गारंटी करता है फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच एंड एक्सप्रेशन। और सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने लगातार अलग अलग केसेस में कहा कि जब तक सूचना नहीं है तब तक हमें ये आजादी लेने का, रियलाइज करने का कोई तरीका नहीं हो सकता, क्योंकि जब तक हमारे पास सूचना नहीं है हम अपने विचार कैसे बनाएंगे और फिर हम अपनी अभिव्यक्ति और आजादी जो है बोलने की, उसको कैसे इस्तेमाल करेंगे। तो सूचना का अधिकार कानून, मैं बस ये कह के सिचुएट करना चाह रही थी कि ये एक फंडामेंटल राइट है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट है, जो कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने क्लियरली बोला है कि हमारे देश में लोगों को है। और अगर हम देखें तो किसी भी और सरकार की फॉर्मेशन, जैसे जो लोकतंत्र नहीं जिन्हें हम कहते, उनसे एक लोकतंत्र में क्या फर्क है? सबसे बड़ा फर्क ये है कि लोकतंत्र में लोग जो सत्ता में बैठे हैं उनसे सवाल कर सकते हैं। They have the right to question those in power. People have the right to question. और जो सूचना का अधिकार कानून है वो हमें वो अधिकार देता है कि हम सूचना मांग रहे हैं लेकिन वास्तव में हम सवाल कर रहे हैं, हम सवाल उठा रहे हैं, हम जवाबदेही मांग रहे हैं। जो सत्ता में बैठे हैं, जो पावर में हैं, उन सभी संस्थाओं से, उन सभी लोगों से, और उन तमाम जो लोग सरकार में नहीं भी बैठे हैं, सरकार के बाहर हैं पर सत्ता को पकड़कर बैठे हैं, उन सभी को हमें सवाल पूछने का अधिकार देता है ये कानून। इस कानून में जब इसकी कल्पना भी की जा रही थी, ड्राफ्ट भी बनाया जा रहा था, तो एक बड़ा सवाल ये था कि सवाल तो हम पूछेंगे और सूचना तो हम मांगेंगे, लेकिन अगर सूचना मिली नहीं तो क्या हो? क्योंकि हम ये जानते हैं कि इंफॉर्मेशन इज पावर, सूचना में ताकत है और सूचना ही ताकत है, हम ये बात बार बार सुनते हैं। तो ऑब्वियसली सूचना अगर शेयर करना है, वो तो सत्ता को, पावर को शेयर करने वाली बात है। डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन ऑफ पावर एक तरह से मूल एक उद्देश्य है सूचना के अधिकार कानून का। तो अब जो लोग सत्ता पकड़ कर बैठे हैं और सेंट्रलाइज करके पावर को बैठे हैं, वो तो कभी नहीं चाहेंगे कि कोई भी इंसान इस देश में, चाहे वो आदिवासी हो, चाहे वो सफाई कर्मचारी हो, चाहे वो एक महिला हो जो घरेलू कामकाज करती है, कि कोई भी खड़ा होके सवाल पूछ ले सरकार से और सूचना ले ले। और ऐसे माहौल में जहां पर भ्रष्टाचार होता है और अनियमितताएं होती हैं और ह्यूमन राइट्स की वायलेशंस होती हैं, जो लोग करते हैं ये वायलेशंस और भ्रष्टाचार, वो तो कतई भी नहीं चाहते कि कोई सवाल पूछे और उनसे सूचना ले ले। तो एक बड़ा मुद्दा ये था कि इस कानून का जब ढांचा बन रहा है तो उसमें अगर हमें सूचना नहीं दी जाती तो हम कहाँ जाएं, और उसके ऊपर एक लंबा विचार भी हुआ और एक्सपीरियंस भी देखा गया इंटरनेशनल। और सबसे एक जरूरी चीज जो सामने आई वो ये थी कि एक ऐसा ढांचा होना चाहिए जो कि सरकार से स्वतंत्र हो, जिसके पास हम जा सके यदि हमें सूचना सरकारें और सत्ताधारी नहीं देते। और ये स्पष्ट था कि अगर ऐसा ढांचा नहीं होगा तो इस कानून का कोई फायदा नहीं रह जाएगा। तो कानून में लिखा गया है कि पहली अपील, यदि हमें सूचना नहीं मिलती तो हम अपील कर सकते हैं, और पहली अपील जाएगी विभाग के अंदर, जो सूचना अधिकारी हैं, जन सूचना अधिकारी, जिनका काम है हमें सूचना देना, यदि वो सूचना नहीं देते या समय से नहीं देते या पूरी सूचना नहीं देते, तो हम पहली अपील दर्ज कर सकते हैं प्रथम अपील अधिकारी के पास जो विभाग के अंदर है। लेकिन अपील का जो सिलसिला है वो वहां खत्म नहीं होता। एक सूचना आयोग बनाया गया है, इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन का गठन किया गया है, और ये इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन स्टेट लेवल्स में हर राज्य में है और सेंट्रल लेवल पे भी केंद्रीय स्तर पे सूचना आयोग है। इनके पास हम जा सकते हैं यदि प्रथम अपील के बाद भी हमें सूचना ना मिले। अब ये सूचना आयोग जो है, हमारे देश में 29 आयोग हैं आज जो काम करते हैं, केंद्रीय सूचना आयोग और राज्य सूचना आयोगों को मिलाकर, इन आयोगों की जो भूमिका थी वो ऐसी सोची गई कि ये लोगों के, ये सिटीजन्स के, ये नागरिकों के हित में काम करेंगे, ये हमारे दोस्त होंगे, और अगर सूचना नहीं मिलेगी तो इनका काम है कि हमें सूचना दिलाएंगे यदि वो सूचना हमें मिलनी चाहिए। और मैं केवल एक चीज इसमें जोड़ूंगी टेक्निकल, और उसके बाद में अपनी बात रखूंगी कि सूचना के अधिकार कानून में हम किसी भी प्रकार की सूचना सरकार से ले सकते हैं। सूचना की जो परिभाषा है, डेफिनेशन है, वो बहुत वास्ट है। बेसिकली एनी डॉक्यूमेंट, रिकॉर्ड, ईमेल, मेमो, एडवाइस, ओपिनियन, एनीथिंग दैट इज हेल्ड बाय द गवर्नमेंट इन एनी फॉर्म। सरकार के पास कोई भी दस्तावेज किसी भी तरीके से है वो हम ले सकते हैं। हम केवल दस्तावेज नहीं ले सकते, उसकी कॉपी, हम उसकी सर्टिफाइड कॉपी ले सकते हैं, प्रमाणित कॉपी ले सकते हैं, और हम कोई काम हो रहा हो उसके सैंपल भी ले सकते हैं, हम इंस्पेक्शन भी मांग सकते हैं। तो ये सारी हमें अधिकार दिए गए हैं। केवल कुछ ऐसी चिन्हित चीजें हैं जो धारा 8 में लिखी गई हैं कानून के, जिन पर हम सूचना नहीं मांग सकते। तो मान लीजिए किसी की निजता पर प्रिवेसी का हनन होता है, अनवारंटेड इन्वेजन ऑफ प्रिवेसी होता है, किसी को कोई बीमारी है, कोई सूचना मांगने की कोशिश करे क्या बीमारी है, ये सारी चीजें, ऐसी चीजें नहीं मांगी जा सकती। उसी तरह से कोई ऐसी चीज हो जिससे कि नेशनल सिक्योरिटी को प्रभावित हो, कि कहाँ पर सेना की कोई टुकड़ी है, कोई ऐसा कॉन्फिडेंशियल चीज है, वो नहीं मांगा जा सकता। बाकी कोई ऐसी चीज नहीं है धारा 8 के बाहर जिसकी हम मांग नहीं कर सकते। अब यदि सूचना मांगी जाए और हमें सूचना ना मिले, वो धारा 8 में ना आती हो, तो हम अपने सूचना आयोग से ये उम्मीद कर सकते हैं कि चाहे हम वहां पहुंचे ना पहुंचे, लेकिन एक बार हमारी अपील या शिकायत वहां पहुंच जाए, हमें सूचना मिलेगी, हमें न्याय मिलेगा। अब सूचना के अधिकार का इस्तेमाल कौन कर रहे हैं? हमने बहुत शोध करे हैं पिछले 15 साल में, 16 साल में। इस कानून का इस्तेमाल लोग जम के कर रहे हैं। हर साल 60 लाख आरटीआई एप्लीकेशन लगाई जाती हैं हमारे देश में, और ये एप्लीकेशन केवल बुद्धिजीवी लोग नहीं लगा रहे हैं, केवल लॉयर, जर्नलिस्ट नहीं लगा रहे हैं, जो कि बहुत देशों में लगाई जाती है। ये सूचना की जो अर्जियां हैं, ये पूरे देश में बैठे हुए लोग अपने अपने गांव में, अपनी अपनी बस्तियों में बैठकर कानून का इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, अपनी हर एक मौलिक अधिकार की लड़ाई को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए, संघर्ष को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए। आज अगर मुझसे कोई पूछे कि क्या इस देश में कोई ऐसी मूवमेंट है, कोई ऐसा कैंपेन है जो किसी भी अधिकार पर, मानव अधिकारों पर, किसी एनवायरमेंटल राइट्स के ऊपर काम करता है, जो इसने सूचना के अधिकार कानून का इस्तेमाल नहीं किया, मुझे याद नहीं है कि कोई ऐसी मूवमेंट है। सभी ने अपने संघर्षों में इस कानून का इस्तेमाल किया है। लोगों को जब उनका राशन नहीं मिलता, उनकी पेंशन नहीं मिलती, लोग आरटीआई एप्लीकेशन लगा के सारे रिकॉर्ड निकालते हैं कि बताइए हमारे नाम का रिकॉर्ड, हमारे नाम का राशन कहाँ गया, हमारे नाम की जो दवाइयां और वेंटिलेटर और ऑक्सीजन सिलेंडर और तमाम चीजें हमें जो मिलनी थी, मिलनी थी क्या हमारे ही पैसे से सरकार को हम तक पहुंचानी थी, उसके दस्तावेज लोग निकाल रहे हैं और उसका इस्तेमाल करके सरकारों को जवाबदेह बना रहे हैं। कहीं जन सुनवाइयां होती हैं, कहीं शिकायतें होती हैं, कहीं पर प्रोटेस्ट होते हैं और लोग उस सूचना का इस्तेमाल करके अपने अधिकार ले रहे हैं। लेकिन सूचना के अधिकार के इस्तेमाल जो है वो केवल अपने बेसिक राइट्स, मौलिक अधिकारों तक भी सीमित नहीं है। इस अधिकार का इस्तेमाल जम के हो रहा है हाईएस्ट ऑफिसेस ऑफ द कंट्री को अकाउंटेबल ठहराने के लिए। तो अगर हम सोचें, कोई ऐसा बड़ा तंत्र नहीं है इस देश में, ऑफिस नहीं है इस देश में, चाहे वो प्रधानमंत्री का ऑफिस हो, चाहे होम मिनिस्ट्री हो, चाहे वो आपके सुप्रीम कोर्ट हो, हाई कोर्ट्स हो, कोई कमीशंस हो, कोई ऐसी नहीं है संस्था सरकारी जहां से लोगों ने सूचना के अधिकार का इस्तेमाल नहीं किया है, वहां से सूचना निकालकर वहां की व्यवस्था को दुरुस्त कराने के संघर्ष में और जवाबदेह बनाने के संघर्ष में। अब ये तो तय है कि जब इतनी पावरफुली कोई भी कानून इस्तेमाल होगा तो कोई सरकार, कोई सत्ता में बैठे लोग खुश नहीं होंगे और बैकलैश तो होगा ही, ये भी जायज सी बात है। और हमने देखा है कि अलग अलग तरीकों से सरकारों ने सूचना के अधिकार पर अंकुश लगाने की कोशिश की है। सरकारों ने ये तमाम कोशिशें की हैं, जो सत्ता में बैठे हैं और जो करप्शन कर रहे हैं, जो ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशंस कर रहे हैं, उन्होंने वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट्स के साथ मिलकर ये पूरी कोशिश की है कि सूचना जो मांगते हैं उन पर प्रहार हो और सूचना के अधिकार पर प्रहार हो, और सबसे बड़ा प्रहार जो सूचना के अधिकार के तहत कमीशन सेट किए गए हैं, इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन है, उन पर हो। और ये बहुत ही तगड़ी सोच है और मैं तो सोचती हूँ कि हम लोग इतना विचार करते हैं पर वहां पर भी जो सत्ता में बैठे लोग हैं वो कम विचार नहीं करते। आप अगर देखें, कोई तरीका नहीं है आज 60 लाख लोग जो आरटीआई एप्लीकेशन लगाते हैं उनके पास जाके सरकार एक एक को डरा नहीं सकती। वो डरते भी नहीं। कितने 90 से ज्यादा लोगों की तो हत्या कर दी गई है क्योंकि उन्होंने सूचना मांगी है। उसके बावजूद हमारे देश में 60 लाख आरटीआई एप्लीकेशन चल रही है, तो डर नहीं रहे लोग, क्योंकि लोग समझ रहे हैं इस कानून की ताकत। तो सरकार ये नहीं कर सकती। ये सरकार समझ गई 15 साल में कि हम लोगों को कितना भी डराएं, धमकाएं, कुछ भी कर लें, वो सूचना मांगना बंद नहीं करेगी। तो सरकार समझ गई कि हम अगर सूचना ना दें, तो अगर कमीशन नहीं बैठे हो, अगर कमीशन हमारे हाथ में हो, तब सूचना नहीं दी जाएगी। तो सरकारें जो है आज जो उनका टारगेट है वो क्लियरली इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशंस है। वो सोच रहे हैं कि हम किस तरह से कमीशंस को इंडिपेंडेंटली काम ना करने दें, कमिश्नर्स को ऐसा बिठाएं कि वो इंडिपेंडेंटली, स्वतंत्र रूप से लोगों के हित में काम ना करें। तो हम हर एक को तो बंद नहीं कर पाएंगे, पर सूचनाएं बंद कर। तो हमारा शोध ये दिखाता है कि आज अगर 100 लोग आरटीआई एप्लीकेशन लगाएं तो उसमें से 50 लोगों को सूचना मिल जाती, 50% सूचना मिलती है। बाकी 50 लोग अपील में जाते हैं। पहली अपील, सेकंड अपील सब नहीं जाते, पर उसमें से बहुत लोग जाते हैं और वहां पर सूचनाएं मुहैया होती हैं। कैसी सूचनाएं? जो सरकार देना नहीं चाहती। क्योंकि सरकार जो देना चाहती है उसको तो हम हमेशा कहते ही हैं कि जो सरकार देना चाहती है वो तो सरकार का प्रोपेगेंडा है। जो सरकार नहीं देना चाहती वहां पर ही तो असली बात छुपी है। तो जो सूचना भ्रष्टाचार को, अनियमितताओं को, ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशंस को, इन सब चीजों को जो उजागर करेगी, ऐसी सूचना रोकी जाती है। और उसके लिए जब इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन में लोग जाते हैं, वहां पर कमिश्नर्स का काम होता है कि वो सुने उनकी अर्जी को और सूचना मुहैया कराएं। अब क्या हो रहा है आज की डेट में, ये हमें समझने की जरूरत है। आज की डेट में जो सवाल पूछते हैं वो सबसे बड़े दुश्मन ठहराए जाते हैं। इस देश के एंटी नेशनल बुलाया जाता है, उन्हें लेबल किया जाता है और हर तरह से उन पर दबाव बनाए जाते हैं। जो डिसेंटर्स हैं, जो सवाल पूछने वाले लोग हैं, जो खड़े होकर जवाब मांगते हैं, वो आज सबसे बुरे लगने लगे हैं सरकारों को। यहाँ तक कि जब ये किलिंग्स हुई, एक्स्ट्रा जुडिशियल किलिंग्स हुई भोपाल के पास, 6 लोगों की किलिंग्स हुई थी, लोगों ने सूचना मांगी, तो जो आज हमारे बहुत बड़े यूनियन मिनिस्टर बैठे हैं पार्लियामेंट में, उन्होंने कहा कि ये कैसा कल्चर हमारे देश में आ गया, कैसी सभ्यता देश में हमारे आ गई है कि हम सूचना मांगते रहते हैं, सरकार को हम बिलीव नहीं करते, हम ट्रस्ट नहीं करते सरकार को। तो सरकारों से सवाल पूछने का ये कल्चर जो हमारे देश में आ गया है, ये बहुत खराब कल्चर है। आप लोग सरकार पर विश्वास कीजिए, हम काम कर रहे हैं बहुत अच्छा, और आप आगे बढ़िए। तो ये भावना जो है, इसको किस तरीके से जमीन पे उतार रही है सरकार, ये हमें दिखाई दे रहा है किस तरह से इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशंस में काम चल रहा है। पहली प्रहार, 3-4 तरह के प्रहार हो रहे हैं हमारे इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशंस पे। पहले तरीके का प्रहार, सरकारें इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशंस में कमिश्नर्स की नियुक्ति ही नहीं करती। तो अगर आप देखें, हम हर साल इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशंस की रिपोर्ट कार्ड निकालते हैं, पहला सवाल जो हम पूछते हैं वो हम कहते हैं, जरा बताइए कि आपके इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन में, राज्य में, केंद्र में कितने सूचना आयोग हैं। और कानून में लिखा है कि 1 मुख्य सूचना आयुक्त और 10 सूचना आयुक्त हर इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर में होंगे। मतलब 1 चीफ इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर एंड अप टू 10 इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर्स इन ईच इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर। आज अगर हम देखें, ऐसे राज्य हैं जहां पर एक भी इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर की नियुक्ति नहीं है, तो मतलब 0 इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर बैठे हैं। तो कमिश्नर ही नहीं है तो कमीशन क्या है, और कमीशन नहीं है तो सूचना के अधिकार का क्या मायने रह जाता है। झारखंड, त्रिपुरा, मेघालय, गोवा, ये सारे स्टेट्स के अंदर, राज्यों में इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर की नियुक्तियां नहीं की गई हैं, कोई इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर नहीं है। वहां पर लोग भटक रहे हैं अगर उन्हें सूचना नहीं मिल रही तो। केंद्र सूचना आयोग में आप देखिए, 2014 में भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार ये कहकर बनी, और ये प्रॉमिस था उनका कि हम पारदर्शिता बढ़ाएंगे, जवाबदेही बढ़ाएंगे। मई 2014 से आज तक एक भी सूचना आयुक्त की नियुक्ति मोदी सरकार ने नहीं की। आज तक 8 साल में एक भी सूचना आयुक्त की नियुक्ति नहीं की गई है केंद्र सूचना आयोग में, जब तक लोग सुप्रीम कोर्ट और हाई कोर्ट नहीं गए और कोर्ट ने ये नहीं कहा कि आप नियुक्ति कीजिए। तो आप ये समझिए कि किस तरीके से रवैया अपनाया जा रहा है इंफॉर्मेशन कमिशंस के प्रति, क्योंकि सरकार कमिशंस की और सूचना के अधिकार कानून की जो महत्व है और जो पावर है, ताकत है, उसको समझ गई है। बहुत सारे राज्य हैं, केंद्र है, जहां पर सुप्रीम कोर्ट का इतना बढ़िया आदेश आया, हम उसको लैंडमार्क जजमेंट कहते हैं, पर मुझे तो कई बार सोच के लगता है क्या लैंडमार्क है। मतलब हमारे देश में 70 से ज्यादा साल हो गए आजादी को, हम अपने आप को लोकतंत्र कहते हैं, और हमें सुप्रीम कोर्ट जाना पड़ता है कहने के लिए कि भाई आपकी स्टैट्यूटरी बॉडीज बनी है, उसके अंदर नियुक्ति तो कर दीजिए। पर सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कह भी दिया, और उसके बावजूद भी वैकेंसीज पड़ी हैं, और इनका सीधा मतलब है कि जितनी अपील्स और कंप्लेंट्स कमिशंस के पास जा रही हैं, शिकायतें और अपीलें, वो लंबित पड़ी हैं। तो आप सोचिए कि झारखंड में आज अगर 2 साल से कोविड का समय चला, लोगों को कितनी सूचना चाहिए थी। अगर लोगों के पास कोई जरिया ही नहीं है, कोई आयुक्त ही नहीं है झारखंड में, और बाकी जगह पर 10-11 की जगह 1 या 2 कमिश्नर्स की नियुक्ति की है, तो पेंडेंसी, लंबित जो मामले हैं वो तो बढ़ते जाएंगे। आज हमारे देश में 3 लाख के करीब, 2,85,000, 3 लाख के करीब केसेस लंबित पड़े हैं, मामले लंबित पड़े हैं। और महाराष्ट्र जैसे राज्य में आप अकेले को देख लीजिए, 1 लाख के करीब केसेस लंबित पड़े हैं सूचना आयोग के अंदर। और इसका क्या मतलब है? इसका मतलब ये है कि हम अपील लेके जाते हैं, वहां पे मामला लंबित होता है क्योंकि कमिश्नर्स अपॉइंटेड नहीं है और लोगों को सालों साल इंतजार करना पड़ रहा है। उड़ीसा में हमारा शोध दिखाता है कि अभी 6 साल 8 महीने लग जाएंगे। अगर आज कोई कमीशन में अपील या शिकायत डाले तो आप 7 साल इंतजार कीजिए, फिर आपकी हियरिंग आएगी, क्योंकि कमिश्नर्स की नियुक्ति ही नहीं हुई है जितने होने चाहिए। उसी तरह से दूसरा जो प्रहार इंफॉर्मेशन कमिशन के ऊपर हम देख रहे हैं, सूचना आयोगों के ऊपर, वो ये है कि कमिश्नर्स की जो स्वतंत्रता है उसे काबू कर लिया गया है। कैसे? जो 2005 में कानून आया उसमें लिखा था कि हर कमिश्नर 5 साल के लिए नियुक्त किए जाएंगे। तो कोई सरकार की मर्जी और मंशा से नहीं काम होना था। जो कमिश्नर की नियुक्ति हुई है वो 5 साल तक काम करेंगे। अगर वो एक एज तक नहीं पहुंचे तो उनका कार्यकाल फिक्स्ड। उनकी सैलरी सरकार फिक्स नहीं करती थी, उनकी पेंशन सरकार फिक्स नहीं करती थी, वो लिंक्ड थी सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जजेस और इस तरीके से, ना कि सरकारें फिक्स करेंगी। 2019 में सरकार ने 14 साल चलने के बाद कानून एक संशोधन बिल ले आए जिसके तहत अब केंद्रीय सरकार ने अपने हाथ में कर लिया है कि वो कैसे तय करेंगे किसका कार्यकाल कितना होगा, किसकी सैलरी कितनी होगी, किसका पेंशन कितनी होगी। तो आप ये समझिए, मैं सूचना मांगती हूं और आप सूचना आयुक्त हैं, आप मेरा केस सुनते हैं, आप कहते हैं मैं सूचना दे देती हूँ, लेकिन जब आप सूचना दे रहे हैं आपको ये हमेशा डर रहेगा कि अगर केंद्र सरकार मुझसे खुश नहीं हुई तो मेरी तो पेंशन बंद हो जाए। तो ये जो पूरा किस तरीके से सरकार ने अपने हाथ में कमिश्नर्स को कर लिया है, उनकी पावर्स को करने की कोशिश की है, इंडिपेंडेंस को, ये दिखाता है और आज हम उसके नतीजे भी देख रहे हैं। किसको चुना जाता है जब अपॉइंटमेंट होती है? रिसर्च दिखा रहा है 60% से ज्यादा इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर्स हमारे देश में एक्स ब्यूरोक्रेट्स, जो सरकारी काम कर चुके हैं, जिन्होंने सरकार को खुश रखा, उन्हें कमिश्नर्स बना दिया जाता है। 85% चीफ इंफॉर्मेशन कमिश्नर्स एक्स गवर्नमेंट ऑफिशियल्स रह चुके हैं। अब आप लेके जाइए किसी केस को, हम तो देख रहे हैं। हमने पूछा हाल ही में कि हमने ये सवाल कर लिया कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट के कोलिजियम ने कुछ नियुक्तियां की और उसके अंदर जो चीफ जस्टिस है, वो चीफ जस्टिस ने क्यों वो नियुक्तियों को होने नहीं दिया। ये केस सामने आया था। जस्टिस गोगोई जो रिटायर हुए, उन्होंने कहा कि हमारी कोलिजियम की मीटिंग में 2 जजेस के नाम एलिवेशन के लिए गए सुप्रीम कोर्ट की और उस डिसीजन को रिवर्स कर दिया गया, चीफ जस्टिस ने अकेले कर दिया, मैं और उसके बाद में किसी और को बना दिया गया। ये सवाल पूछ लिया गया। बहुत जरूरी है ये हमारी जुडिशरी की इंडिपेंडेंस के लिए सवाल, लेकिन उसके ऊपर इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन जो है, केंद्रीय सूचना आयोग, उन्होंने कहा नहीं, ये तो डिसीजन शायद लिखा नहीं गया होगा, हम इसके अंदर कुछ नहीं कर सकते। लोकपाल की नियुक्तियां हुई। लोकपाल की नियुक्ति के अंदर बहुत जरूरी है कि इंडिपेंडेंट लोग आए। लोगों ने पूछा कि जरा इसके जो मिनट्स हैं मीटिंग के, जिसके अंदर नियुक्तियों को डिसीजन लिया गया, उसकी मिनट्स दे दीजिए हमें, क्योंकि लीडर ऑफ ऑपोजिशन तो बैठे ही नहीं थे उसके अंदर, कोई किसी को नियुक्त बिठाया ही नहीं गया था। तो सरकार ने आपस में मिलकर अपने ही लोगों को तो नहीं बिठा लिया। हम जानना चाहते हैं, आप हमें डिसीजन की कॉपी दीजिए। वो नहीं दी गई। फिर मामला गया केंद्रीय सूचना आयोग में और वहां पर फिर ये कहकर मना कर दिया गया कि इसमें तो प्रधानमंत्री बैठे थे, होम मिनिस्टर बैठे थे, ये तो बड़े हाई लेवल डिग्निटरीज हैं, हम सूचना नहीं दे सकते। और सिग्नल दिया जाता है कमीशंस में। हमने देखा है प्रधानमंत्री ने कहा कि मैंने ग्रेजुएशन दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी से किया। किसी ने पूछ लिया कि यूनिवर्सिटी में उस साल 1978 में किस किस ने पास करी ग्रेजुएशन, उसको देने से मना कर दिया गया सूचना को। तो अब मामला इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन तक पहुंचा। किसी एक इंडिपेंडेंट माइंडेड कमिश्नर, प्रोफेसर आचार्युलू, मैं नाम ले सकती हूँ, उन्होंने ये ऑर्डर दे दिया कि ये सूचना तो आप मुहैया कराइए, इसमें क्या बात है, ये क्या गोपनीय सूचना है कि 1978 में किसने डिग्री प्राप्त करी दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी से। वो सूचना जैसे ही उन्होंने ये ऑर्डर दिया, उनके अंडर से सारे पोर्टफोलियो एक्सेप्ट वन निकाल दिया। ये सिग्नलिंग हो रही है कमीशंस को आज कि अगर आप ऐसा ऑर्डर देंगे जिससे कि जो सत्ता में बैठे लोग हैं वो खुश नहीं हैं, तो आपको एडवर्स कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस झेलने पड़ेंगे। और ये कैरेट एंड स्टिक अप्रोच है, क्लियर और ब्रेजनली किया जा रहा है आज हमारे देश में। एक जो मुख्य सूचना आयुक्त थे केंद्रीय सूचना आयोग के, आज वो गवर्नर है। तो सरकार जो हम पोस्ट रिटायरमेंट बेनिफिट्स की बात करते थे केवल जजेस की, आज वो इन स्टैट्यूटरी बॉडीज में भी हमें दिख रहा है। जो टो करेगा लाइन सरकार की, उसे रिवॉर्ड किया जाएगा, और जो टो नहीं करेगा उसे हम दंडित करेंगे। ये स्पष्ट रूप से बताया जा रहा है। मैं केवल ये कह के अपनी बात समाप्त करूंगी। अमृता ने सवाल पूछा था कि हम क्या कर सकते हैं और क्यों जरूरी है। देखिए, सूचना का अधिकार और सूचनाएं लेना और सवाल पूछना goes to the heart of our democracy। हमारे लोकतंत्र की जो पूरी जिसको हम कहते हैं स्पिरिट है, सोल है। और अगर हमारे आयोग जो इंस्टीट्यूशनल ढांचा है वो कमजोर कर दिया जाता है, तो सूचना लोगों तक नहीं पहुंचेगी। और हम ये उम्मीद करना छोड़ दें कि कहीं से कोई सरकार ये हमारी मदद में आएगी। हमें ही ये जो आयोग है इनकी मॉनिटरिंग करनी है, हमें ही इन पर दबाव बनाना है अगर ये गलत तरीके से काम करते हैं। और हमारे देश में जो हम सभी लोगों को, जो सिटीजन्स हैं, इन हमें ही मिलकर, नागरिकों को, लोगों को मिलकर हमें ये आवाज उठानी पड़ेगी कि जब लोकतांत्रिक ढांचे जो बनाए गए हैं, संस्थाएं जो बनाई गई हैं, उन पर प्रहार होगा तो हम चुप नहीं रहेंगे, हम खड़े रहेंगे, हम अपनी आवाज उठाएंगे और उनसे सही से काम कराएंगे। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद अंजलि, आपने बहुत विस्तार से बताया। मैं अब इसमें अंग्रेजी में एक संक्षिप्त ट्रांसलेशन इसका करूंगी। सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, थैंक यू टू अंजलि फॉर अ वेरी डिटेल्ड ओवरव्यू ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशन, बिकॉज आई थिंक what was very important was that you placed the importance of commissions in the framework of democracy. So Anjali started off by talking to us about the background of the Right to Information Act. Essentially, the right to information flows from Article 19 of the Constitution, and the right to information has been upheld as a fundamental right in repeated judgments by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has underlined how important RTI is for realizing our democratic and constitutional rights. She said that a key aspect that differs democracy from other forms of government is that people can ask questions of those in power and seek accountability. And she said that the tool for doing this is the Right to Information Act. And during the drafting stage, she said that the question was that what can people do if they don't get information? Because as we all know, information is power, and therefore those who hold information will not easily agree to sharing it. So she said that a lot of time was spent on thinking and formulating that what would be the framework required to ensure that when the government does not give information, what can be done. Taking that forward, there's an appeal process laid down under the Right to Information Act, in which information commissions are the apex appellate bodies under the Right to Information Act. So anyone who does not get information under the RTI Act can finally knock on the doors of the information commissions, which are independent of the government and are appointed at the center and in states. So there are information commissions set up at the central level and then in each and every state. Anjali said that research shows that every year 6 million RTI applications are filed, and these range from seeking information on issues like rations, pensions, education, development works, right to asking the highest officers about their performance. So whether it's the Supreme Court, whether it's the Presidential Secretariat, it's the Prime Minister's office, the Home Ministry. And as can be expected, that no government likes to be questioned and no government wants to easily share information. And therefore, there's been a continuous backlash on the Right to Information Act. She said one form of the backlash has been the attacks on RTI users. More than 89 people have been actually murdered in our country for filing RTI applications and seeking to expose corruption or seeking to expose what's really happening. But she said that people continue to remain undeterred, and the government very quickly realized that it can't run around the country trying to silence each and every information seeker. And therefore, the government has turned its focus and the backlash on how to undermine information commissions, because she said that the government realizes that information commissions as the apex body is really where that contestation happens, that when the government does not want to give information, that's where that contestation of rights happens, that should this be disclosed or should this not be disclosed. She said that research undertaken by them shows that in 50% of the cases, people get the information that they seek. And in the remaining 50%, they have to go into appeal. She said that the information that government parts with easily is, of course, something that they're not interested in hiding. And it's really sort of, she termed it as propaganda that the government is happy to share. But the real contestation is about the information that the government seeks to hide or seeks exemptions for. She said that if we look at it, the attack on information commissions has taken three distinct forms. The first thing that she spoke about is that across the countries, governments have realized that if they don't make appointments, commissions become defunct. She spoke to us about the last report that they came out with, finding that the Jharkhand, Tripura, Meghalaya, and Goa information commissions were completely defunct at that time because not a single information commissioner had been appointed. She told us that in Jharkhand, for the last 2 years, not even one information commissioner exists, which means that if you're seeking information from a public authority under the jurisdiction of the Jharkhand Information Commission and you don't get information, you have no right to appeal. There's no forum for you to take your appeal to. And she said governments have realized this is an easy way to undermine commissions. So from not appointing any commissioners to oftentimes not appointing adequate number of commissioners. Anjali spoke to us that if you look at the state of the Central Information Commission, since the Modi government came to power on the plank of anti-corruption and good governance, in 2014, not a single information commissioner has been appointed unless people have had to go and knock on the doors of the court and seek a direction from the court. Just a very obvious direction saying that please appoint information commissioners. She said not a single appointment has happened unless there's a direction from the court. The third thing that she spoke to us about is that when these people are not appointed or when adequate number of commissioners are not appointed, what happens is that there's a long delay and a long waiting time for which people have to wait for the disposal of their appeals and complaints. She told us that in Maharashtra Information Commission, the pendency has crossed 1 lakh. In Odisha Information Commission, because of the less number of commissioners appointed, people have to wait for more than 6 years for the hearing of their appeal or complaint related to violation of the Right to Information Act. So she said the first way that commissions are being undermined is by just not making timely appointments or not appointing adequate number of commissioners. The second way that the government has undermined the Information Commission is actually by passing the RTI Amendment Act in 2019. It was the first amendment ever made successfully to the Right to Information Act. And she said that all that the government did in that, it's not that the government said, oh, you can't seek information on this or that. All that the government did was that they took for themselves the power to decide the salaries and tenure of information commissioners, which was actually crucial to ensuring their independence and insulating them from political influence. So she said that the other way that they very obviously undermined information commissions is by taking unto itself this particular power. when appointments are indeed made, whether people have to go to court or there's a long movement or advocacy by civil society, she said, look at the kind of people who are being appointed. She shared with us statistics that more than 60% of commissioners are former bureaucrats, and if you look at chief information commissioners, nearly 90% are former bureaucrats who've actually spent their whole life in government, working with government. And she said very often they are quite reluctant to, in fact, part with information. She said, what's the result of this attack on commissions, of this undermining of commissions? She said, the first thing is that commissions themselves and commissioners are reluctant to give orders for disclosure of information, especially orders where they feel the government of the day might not be happy with it. So she shared with us that when information was sought about the decisions taken by a Supreme Court collegium, or when information was sought related to minutes of meetings of appointment of the Lokpal, the CIC refused to interfere with the denial of information and actually upheld denial of information, even though these are quite obvious things that should in fact be in the public domain. She said that the government follows a carrot and stick approach with information commissioners. Commissioners who do well according to the government, which obviously means play to the government's tunes, are often rewarded. She shared with us that one of the former chief information commissioners is now a governor in one of the union territories. And in terms of the stick approach, she shared with us that when a commissioner did in fact order the disclosure of the results from Delhi University about whether or not our current Prime Minister actually holds a degree in entire political science from the university, all of his work and all of his portfolio was taken away from him and he was made an example out of. So it's really the government using a carrot and stick approach. Finally, Anjali ended by saying that people have to fight for commissions, which means that whenever governments are not making appointments, we have to fight for those commissions. But we also have to fight with commissions to make sure that when they are in fact functional, that they really play the role of being friends of information seekers and using the powers that they have under the law. Thank you very, very much, Anjali, for that very detailed presentation on the Right to Information Act and specifically on information commissions, and really for walking us through how these have been undermined over a period of time and where we are currently and what needs to happen. I would now like to invite Beena Pallical. Beena, if you could switch on your video. And Beena, what we'd love to hear from you about is about the National Commission for Scheduled Castes. We know that that's been set up as a constitutional body, but in states, it's mostly a statutory body. So if you talk to us about what was the envisaged role, how are they performing, where are they going wrong, where are they going right, and what really do you want to see as part of the national campaign for Dalit human rights on what needs to happen? So the floor is yours, Beena. Beena हमसे बात करेंगी जो राष्ट्रीय अनुसूचित जाति आयोग है उसके बारे में कि वो किस प्रकार से अपना कामकाज कर रहे हैं. Over to you, Beena. Are you unable to unmute? Wait, we'll just 1 second. Can someone make her a co-host?
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Thanks so much, Amrita, and thank you so much, Anjali. I also learned a lot from on the Information Commission. And thank you very much, NAPM, for inviting me. I think this is a very important but less talked about subject. I know Henri ji is here. He's an expert on this, so I'm not an expert, I would like to say upfront. But yes, working with the commissions and how that has helped us or not helped us is something that we'll delve into now. I first of all like to draw everybody's attention to the context of why these commissions are there. If you look at the total number of cases today, which is registered under the Prevention of Atrocities Act, it's about 50,000 cases roughly, around 7,000 cases only relating to women. And then of course, if we go state-wise, those numbers, are higher in states like UP, Rajasthan, MP, Haryana, where there are a lot of, atrocities. So against this background and against the background of wanting to actually eliminate or totally, eliminate discrimination, caste-based discrimination, and also eliminate the whole form of untouchability. Many of the mechanisms that were, that were put in place, and one of that is the Commission on Scheduled Castes. They, in Article 338 and 338A of the Constitution of India, lays down this provision of the establishment of the national commissions or the constitutional bodies. As you all know, there are constitutional bodies, and then there are statutory bodies, and then there are quasi-judicial bodies. These are the different types of bodies, whereas this particular National Commission for the Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes, respectively, under the Article 338 and 338A, are constitutional bodies. This was formed in 2003, where earlier to 2003, there was both the National Commission for Scheduled Castes as well as for Scheduled Tribes was, a joint sort of a commission. And in 2003, under an amendment, these two became two separate commissions, which is one for Scheduled Castes and one for Scheduled Tribes. Now, what do they do? So in 78, I think, by means of a resolution, 1978, the government had set up a non-statutory multi-member commission for both SCs and STs. 87, it came to know both as National Commission for SCs and STs. And then 1990, that was the 65th constitutional amendment, a multi-member National Commission replaced the Commissioner for SCs and STs. And in 2003, by the 89th constitutional amendment, the National Commission for SCs and STs became two separate bodies. 2004, the National Commission for SCs came into existence, where they have a chairperson, a vice chairperson, and 3 other members. So far, there have been 6 national commissions, 2004, 2007, 2010, 2013, and 2021, where Shri Vijay Sampla is the chairperson, Arun Haldar as the vice chairperson, and Subhash Ramnath Pardi and Dr. Anjabala as the members. So the chairperson is appointed by the president of the country. Now, what is the functions of these commissions? Many times we don't realize how much of a teeth they have as a commission. They have the responsibility of conducting investigation and looking into matters of the legal rights of the scheduled castes. They also have a mandate to advise and plan a process in which the socio-economic development can be achieved both at the central and state level. So looking at the development vis-a-vis the communities of the scheduled castes. Of course, I already said that the president decides appointment and term. It is the responsibility also of the commission to submit annual reports on their progress, what they have done, what they have completed. And they also got the responsibility of recommending measures that will be implemented with help in assuring the application of the legal processes and measures. The commission also discharges all the functions around welfare, development, safeguarding of culture, traditions, and other matters related to scheduled castes. So these are some of the functions that they are adopted by the commission, or they are supposed to be they're mandated by the commission to do that. Now, many times I feel that the commission, although is there, it's there. I don't think at some point they don't know the powers that are vested for them. They don't give. Many times in 2000, I think 14, 15, the number of pending cases with the scheduled castes, the number of cases they received were about 29,000 cases. Out of this, only 7,000 cases have been disposed of. This is on their own, what they have declared publicly. and about 21,000 cases are still pending as of 2015. This is only the data that I could garner to let you know how what are the pending cases in terms of how much they have been able to do. In terms of powers, I think they have a lot of powers that they could, they could investigate, they could monitor the matters. And let me tell you, they can only not investigate, but they also have to look at how they can be part of the planning process. And I think that is a part that they do not at all look at. I mean, I have not heard, I don't know if Henri ji has heard of any incidents or any ways where the National Commission on Scheduled Castes has actually participated in a planning process for the development of the scheduled castes or the Dalits. However, I would like to point out that this year, that is 2022-23 budget, when we had presented the budget and the analysis of the budget, we were quite surprised that the National Scheduled Caste Commission actually called the various ministries, I think Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, like this various ministries, they called on them. They called us as a civil society to present our findings, and they actually demanded answers from these different ministries. And I thought that was a really good thing that they were doing. This was, remember, the Scheduled Tribes Commission, not the Scheduled Caste Commission. We have not heard anything on the budgets from the National Commission of Scheduled Castes. And we thought this was a really good process where they asked for feedback on the analysis that the National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights presented. And they asked the ministries to respond to the queries that we had and the gaps that we had brought out. So the ministries, there were about 6 or 8 ministries that were called upon by the Commission on ST. So this is something that they can really push forward to ensure that they're part of the whole planning process. Also, because, I work a lot on budgets, we've also noticed that a lot of the part of the budget, there is no budget that is actually allocated to ensure, that there's the functioning of these commissions. They of course they might get a separate budget, but in the budget that under the SCP, there is no specific budget. And that is a sad part, because budget can be allocated to ensure that, they're able to function better, and they're able to ensure that some of these things can really be taken seriously. We also presented to the National Commission 2 years ago during the COVID for the deaths of all the workers, sanitation workers who died during COVID. And the National Commission did call up the government, the Delhi government, and did ask them for reports on these deaths. So there have been engagement, there have been a lot of engagement by civil society. However, I think the mandate that they are given to be able to do some of these things, they're not taking it seriously. And let's remember that most of these commissions, especially the SC Commission and ST Commission, are very, are run by the government. So whichever political party is in power, most of the time they're mostly adhering to the demands of the government rather than what they're actually what they're actually meant to do. Now, many times we see that many of these positions remain vacant, and that over a time period, because of the vacancy in many state commissions, the positions remain vacant. I think there are only 12 or 13 states that have actually commissions on SC, so not all states have that. A lot of times in many of these commissions, the members may not be from the community. So that is a big concern. Women representation is very low. That is another concern that we have, that when we are looking at the larger issues of Dalit issues or the scheduled caste issues, we need to have proper representation from women, and that is seldom not the case. It is only independent for namesake, because most of the time it's led by a member of the political party which is ruling. So of course, I've already said this, that their adherence is to the political party. Very restrictive directive powers. Recently, I think in this year or last year, there's a case in the Delhi court to see what are the powers of the National Commission on Scheduled Castes. Do they have the power to reinstate members in different bodies? Because there was a case of somebody being unlawfully removed, and then they wanted to reinstate. So there is a case going on in Delhi court. I have not looked at what has happened to the follow-up of that. So what is their role? Commission's role is to inquire, monitor, and follow up also on the compensation for many of these cases, atrocity cases and violence. But they cannot look into any law and order matters. So their role stops at just inquiry and giving recommendations. It can summon and enforce the attendance of any person, seek production of any document, and receive evidence on affidavits or requisition of any public records or copy from the court or office. The conviction rate under this is very low, and the pendency rate is very high. Of course, very less fund. They don't take cognizance in number of cases, and often take a very long time over cases. So I know that there are many cases that we have submitted to the national, to the commission, but there has been no response. They don't respond, they don't give statements. So I think a lot of times the time taken to process some of these documents it takes a long time. The commission should meet technically at least once in a month, and that notice of that meeting shall be issued 2 weeks before. Any emerging meetings should also be publicly declared, and there should be a quorum of at least 3 members while they are doing these meetings. So that's important. Now, I think I'd also like to say that how they're functioning, but what could be some of the steps that can be taken by the National Commission in strengthening. So I think one of their major roles should be to ensure the effective implementation of the processes of both the POA Act as well as the other acts that are there for the scheduled castes. And I think it's really important that they facilitate the implementation, effective implementation, therefore monitoring, taking these cases on board, questioning the governments, etc. I think that's really important. I think it is really good if they can sensitize different institutions, capacitate them in ensuring that these policies also demand for funds, so that much of this is there is a provision, there can be provisions within the scheduled caste subplan where they can demand for funds for the effective functioning of some of these duties. Because even if they were to go for go and look at a case, maybe go to the states for any kind of inquiry, I think it's important that there's sufficient funds for them to do that. And of course, the bottom line we have to remember is that they have to be actively involved in the planning process for the development of socioeconomic development of scheduled castes and also scheduled tribes for the Commission on STs. I think that is really important. I will stop here. In conclusion, I'd like to say that though these bodies are constitutional bodies, I think it's seldom we see the strength which they come. So they are like they're like lions. They have power, but they don't roar. They're just there as these national bodies. So I think there's a lot more that they can do. There's a lot more, but I also feel that we are here talking on the accountability, and it's we as civil society should also demand some of these roles that they are given to be effectively implemented. And I think that is our duty as civil society to push them. Thank you very much, Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim, thank you, Beena, for the detailed overview of the National Commission on Scheduled Castes and also walking us through the powers that they have on paper and what you said in the end, that perhaps they remain paper tigers, not wanting to roar when that's required. So I'll do a brief summary in Hindi for all our non-English speaking friends. तो बीना ने हमारे से बात शुरू करी. उन्होंने पहले हमें थोड़ा सा बताया कि ये जो राष्ट्रीय आयोग है अनुसूचित जाति के लिए, ये पहले अनुसूचित जाति और अनुसूचित जनजाति के लिए एक ही आयोग था। और ये सबसे पहले तो सरकार ने केवल एक नोटिफिकेशन के दौरान उसको बना दिया गया था। उसके बाद इसको एक संविधान के संशोधन के थ्रू उसको संविधान में लाया गया। लेकिन बहुत सालों तक ये एक ही कंबाइन आयोग चला अनुसूचित जाति और अनुसूचित जनजाति के लिए। 2003 में जाकर एक संविधान के संशोधन के बाद अब ये दोनों आयोग अलग है। तो अभी हमारे देश में एक है राष्ट्रीय आयोग अनुसूचित जाति के लिए और एक है राष्ट्रीय आयोग अनुसूचित जनजाति के लिए। उन्होंने हमें बताया कि अगर हम देखें पूरा ये परिप्रेक्ष्य क्या है जिसमें कि वो काम कर रहे हैं, उनकी जो मूलभूत जो कार्य है वो है कि कि पूरा मॉनिटरिंग करना, इन्वेस्टिगेशन करना और जितने भी अनुसूचित जाति है उनके लिए कल्याणकारी योजनाओं में दखल देना। तो उसमें चाहे वो प्लानिंग का प्रोसेस हो, चाहे मॉनिटरिंग का प्रोसेस हो, चाहे बजटिंग का प्रोसेस हो, और साथ में इनके पास ये भी पावर है कि वो जांच करवा सकते हैं। तो बीना ने हमें बताया कि अगर हम पूरे देश में परिप्रेक्ष्य देखें तो 50,000 से ज्यादा केसेस फाइल होते हैं प्रिवेंशन ऑफ एट्रोसिटीज एक्ट के तहत, और इसमें से काफी बड़ी संख्या महिलाएं भी फाइल करती हैं। तो जरूरत तो बहुत है इस प्रकार के आयोग की जो कि एक ओवरऑल एक रोल देखे कि भाई क्या हो रहा है इन केसेस में, किस प्रकार से केसेस को आगे ले जाया जा रहा है, जहाँ पे आगे नहीं ले जाया जा रहा वहां पे क्या हो सकता है। लेकिन बीना ने हमें बताया कि अगर हम आयोग की वेबसाइट पे ही देखें तो ये आंकड़े उनको आयोग की वेबसाइट पे ही मिले हैं कि ये थोड़े से कुछ साल पुराने के आंकड़े हैं, उसके बाद के अभी लेटेस्ट आंकड़े नहीं है। उन्होंने बताया कि आयोग की वेबसाइट ये बताती है कि 29,000 उनके पास शिकायतें आई आयोग के पास, राष्ट्रीय अनुसूचित जाति आयोग के पास, जिसमें से केवल 7,000 का निपटारा हो पाया और 21,000 से ज्यादा लंबित मामले चल रहे हैं। तो मतलब आयोग की वेबसाइट के ही अगर हम आंकड़े नाप लें तो एक समझ में आ जाता है कि काफी मतलब धीमे से काम हो रहा है, जिस तेजी से काम होना चाहिए वो भी बिल्कुल नहीं हो रहा। उन्होंने हमें बताया कि अगर हम आयोग का देखें गठन कैसे होता है तो उसमें एक चेयरपर्सन होते हैं, एक वाइस चेयरपर्सन होते हैं और 3 मेंबर्स होते हैं, और इन सबकी नियुक्ति राष्ट्रपति करते हैं, सरकार के मतलब एक तरीके से कहने से की जाती है। बीना ने हमें बताया कि आयोग थोड़ा बहुत तो तब भी कई बार कुछ सवाल जवाब पूछ लेते हैं सरकार से। कभी कभी ये भी होता है कि उनके पास जब कोई रिपोर्ट जाती है तो वो उसमें कुछ जांच भी कर लेते हैं। लेकिन एक जो कार्य है जिसमें कि आयोग के पास जिम्मेदारी है लेकिन वो बिल्कुल दखल नहीं दे रहा, वो है जो पूरा नीतिगत मामलों में दखल देना। यानी कि जब प्लानिंग चल रही है, जब बजट के ऊपर चर्चा चल रही है, जो सोशियो इकोनॉमिक प्लानिंग है, मतलब जो आर्थिक नीतियां जो बनाई जा रही हैं, उन सबको लेके उनमें जो कल्याणकारी योजनाओं को लेकर जब योजना बनाई जा रही है उस समय वो बिल्कुल भी दखल नहीं देते हैं। और बिल्कुल उन्होंने कभी नहीं देखा कि बजट के ऊपर आयोग ने कोई टिप्पणी दी हो। उन्होंने हमें बताया कि पिछले साल जब NCDHR ने अपने बजट ब्रीफ सब जगह शेयर करे थे तब अनुसूचित जनजाति वाले आयोग ने तब भी उनके बजट ब्रीफ का इस्तेमाल करके कम से कम कुछ सरकारी मंत्रालयों को फोन करके सवाल पूछे थे कि भाई ये कैसे आप कर रहे हैं सब प्लान के साथ और इस प्रकार के सवाल। लेकिन जो अनुसूचित जाति वाला जो आयोग है उसने कभी ऐसा कुछ एक्शन नहीं लिया। उन्होंने हमें बताया कि कोविड के दौरान जब एक शिकायत भेजी गई थी आयोग को कि जो सैनिटेशन वर्कर्स हैं उनके लिए क्या किया जा रहा है, तो उन्होंने बताया कि उन्होंने दिल्ली सरकार को फोन करके उसके ऊपर कुछ कुछ एक्शन लिया, लेकिन एक जो दृढ़ तरीके से काम करने की जरूरत है वो नहीं हो पा रहा है। आपने हमें बताया कि केवल 12 से 13 राज्यों में अनुसूचित जाति के आयोग का गठन भी हुआ है, मतलब कि आधे देश में तो ऐसे कोई आयोग है ही नहीं। और ये सोचना कि कहीं और कोई एट्रोसिटी हो और या फिर कुछ और मुद्दा हो तो उसकी शिकायत कोई दिल्ली लेके आएगा, वो तो मतलब खुद ही में एक नामुमकिन जैसी चीज हो जाती है। बीना ने हमें बताया कि क्योंकि सरकार द्वारा नियुक्तियां होती हैं तो ज्यादातर और ये इनके शब्द हैं कि ज्यादातर जो पार्टी पावर में होती है उसी का किसी ना किसी सदस्य को आयोग में बिठा दिया जाता है। तो मतलब स्वतंत्रता तो बिल्कुल ही छोड़ दीजिए, वो एक सवाल भी नहीं पूछते और फिर जो पूरा मंशा है वो उसी प्रकार से चलती है। एक जो मुद्दा है जो बीना ने बताया, जो एक किस्म की कमी है उसके गठन में ही, वो ये है कि केवल इनके पास सुझाव देने का ताकत है, मतलब कि डायरेक्शन नहीं दे सकते, आदेश नहीं दे सकते, केवल सुझाव के रूप में दे सकते हैं। लेकिन उसके बावजूद बीना ने बताया कि आयोगों के पास सिविल कोर्ट की पूरी पावर है, मतलब कि वो एफिडेविट पे जानकारी मांग सकते हैं, किसी भी बड़े अधिकारी की हाजिरी लगवा सकते हैं अपने सामने, किसी भी सरकार को बोल सकते हैं कि आप हमें आंकड़े दिखाइए, हमें डॉक्यूमेंट दिखाइए। लेकिन अगर हम देखें कि वो क्या इसका इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, तो उन्होंने बोला कि ना के बराबर इस्तेमाल हो रहा है इन सब ताकतों का। तो ये बीना ने बोला कि अगर ये सही से चले और ये सरकारों से केवल सवाल पूछ लें कि भाई बताइए कि कैसे ये हो गया, इतना अट्रोसिटीज क्यों हो रहा है यहाँ पे, या फिर जो सैनिटेशन वर्कर्स हैं उनके डेथ के ऊपर भी अगर 4 सवाल पूछ ले सरकारों से, तो एक गंभीर और एक बहुत जबरदस्त इसका इम्पैक्ट पड़ सकता है। लेकिन उन्होंने बताया कि आयोग के पास जो ताकत है उसका भी वो पूरी तरीके से इस्तेमाल नहीं कर रहे। अंत में बीना ने बोला कि कागज पे पढ़ के तो ऐसा लगता है कि एक शेर जैसे इसकी विकल्पना की गई है, लेकिन असली में वो बिल्कुल गर्राते नहीं है, चुप बैठे हुए हैं और देश में कुछ भी हो जाए तो उसमें दखल देने में आगे बढ़ के नहीं आते। और उन्होंने बोला कि हमें सबसे जरूरी चीज है कि हम लोगों को आयोगों को भी जवाबदेह बनाना पड़ेगा कि भाई आप चुप कैसे बैठे हैं, क्योंकि जो आयोग बने हैं वो हम सब के लिए ही बने हैं और इसीलिए हमारी जिम्मेदारी भी है और हमारा नेतृत्व भी है लोकतंत्र में कि हम लोग ये सवाल जवाब का सिलसिला जारी रखें। तो आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद बीना, थैंक यू बीना फॉर द डिटेल्ड presentation on the SC Commission. And I think what you pointed out, that more than half the country doesn't even have active commissions, is really a cause for huge concern, I think, for all of us. Now we'll move ahead and talk about the National Commission for Women. So Mani, over to you for the next 15 to 20 minutes. You're welcome to speak in either one language and I'll provide translation in the other one. Over to you, Mani.
A very good evening and thank you for having me. I'll try to do just as well, or at least close to how the speakers before me have spoken. So I've been asked to speak about the National Commission for Women. 30 years ago, it was a long struggle of many women's rights activists who felt the need for a constitutional machinery to protect women's agency. And that is what led to the formation of the NCW. It was formed on 31st of January, 1992. And the idea was to establish an autonomous and independent body. एक तरह से महिलाओं के लिए बहुत बड़ी जीत थी कि एक ऐसी बॉडी होगी जो महिलाओं के राइट्स प्रोटेक्ट करेगी. It will have a host of powers and duties. It was a very noble idea, and I think it was a very beautiful thing to have happened in this country, and rather groundbreaking, in fact. But 3 decades later, हम देख रहे हैं that it has lost its mandate. कि जो जीत हमें इतने साल पहले मिली थी, क्या उसका मकसद कायम है आज के दिन? That is what we are here to talk about. Is this institution functioning well? कि ये जो institution बनाया गया है as a watchdog for injustices against women and to function as a think tank for the empowerment of women and facilitate the empowerment of women, is it working perfectly? Is it working as per the mandate of the Act? Now, I would like to start here by giving some examples. In 2018, when a Thomson Reuters survey found India to be the most dangerous country in the world, the current chairperson of the NCW outrightly rejected the said report. She said, women make complaints about, and I'm quoting, women make complaints about sexual violence for claiming compensation or settling property disputes. कि जो महिलाएं हैं वो कंप्लेंट इसलिए ले करती हैं ताकि उनके उनको पैसा मिले या उनके जो भी प्रॉपर्टी के जो भी लड़ाइयाँ हैं वो सुलझा दी जाए. She also said, and I'm quoting again, when they increased money for gang rape in UP, suddenly the number of complaints increased for gang rape in UP. So also again suggesting that women are filing these complaints only because they are after the money or they're after a certain property. And this is, to suggest that this is not much of a concern. And she said this despite the fact that UP has one of the highest number of crimes against women. On another occasion, she denied that domestic violence cases had risen during COVID, during the lockdown, even though multiple reports said that, there have been a significant increase in the number of women who've been victims of domestic violence during that time. That time, she said the increase in domestic violence complaint shows a spike in reporting, not necessarily a rise in such incidents or crimes. Again, in October 2020, she had gotten into a controversy. It was covered by a lot of news media, wherein she somewhat gave legitimacy to a term called love jihad, which admittedly the parliament, has said that there is no such thing and we don't keep any record. When I filed an RTI, I was also told by the National Commission for Women that there is no such thing as love jihad. But anyway, she went ahead and discussed this with the then governor of Maharashtra. And she said that she was concerned about the rise in the cases of love jihad. As such, she got into that controversy. But she also placed the love jihad cases, a completely abstract term, amidst, and she placed it alongside serious crimes like rape and molestation, even though academically it's been proven that this is just a conspiracy theory, and it's an attack on a women's right to choose. Then, and I'm going to speak about what some of these chairpersons and members have said in the past, regardless of what political party they belong to, because in my experience, regardless of the party they're coming from, there have been women who've made extremely regressive remarks and sexist remarks. So I'm just trying to show a pattern here. I'm not saying all women will come along and make such comments, but there have been seriously derogatory remarks made by members of the Women's Commission. In July 2012, the chairperson of the commission said, rapes could be reduced if women dress properly. And again, I'll quote, aping the West blindly is eroding our culture and causing such crimes to happen. This at the time had also made headlines. Another former chief of the NCW for the term 2014 to 17, who is now a full-fledged member of the BJP, she said in an interview that freedom or autonomy is a risk for aggressive women. कि अगर औरतों को या महिलाओं को ज़्यादा आज़ादी दे दी जाती है, तो वो एक रिस्क है उनके लिए. Now, earlier heads have on various occasions also revealed names of molestation victims. They've questioned women's failure to protect themselves. Another one said that being called sexy by a man should be taken as a compliment. Now, this is an astounding piece of advice, given that the number of sexual violence cases in this country is soaring by the day. It's a country where, rape happens every, I think at least one rape happens every 5 minutes. So far as a recent report that I've seen says. Now, all these comments are clearly extremely regressive, and they are, if anything, equivalent to the most patriarchal elements of our society. Personally, I've just given you some examples of what these women have said in the past. They are meant to be the protectors of that institution, the protectors of women's rights. But personally, also, I've handled cases, where a woman comes to me. Of course, we'll go to the court and things like that. But I've advised them to approach the NCW to see if that works. And I can say this with conviction that never have I heard back. These are just emails that I don't know are going where. You rarely ever hear back from the commission, and most of these requests fall, on deaf ears. I've also moved RTIs, questioning the NCW, asking difficult and critical questions. For example, I just told you about the love jihad issue. I also on one occasion asked the NCW whether a team was present during the 2020 Hathras case, and what the investigation found, or if there was a report, because the girl had been cremated at wee hours of the night, and I did not receive a response. If ever I've received a response, it's vague and abstract and is not really a response. The CIC also, the Central Information Commission, Anjali ji has spoken about it. And I think, with the RTIs before the NCW, I think I'm one of those 50% of people jinko jawab nahi milta hai. So yeah, I guess I've been unlucky, but I did appeal. And the CIC has also said, and we also have to see how these organizations and institutions are blaming each other, because the CIC told the NCW, stop acting like a post office, stop forwarding emails from here to here, and don't be anti-RTI. That's what was said by the CIC to the National Commission for Women. Now, if you look at the powers, they're fairly extensive, right? You'd think, what has gone wrong? If you read the Act, I think it's fairly empowering. Section 10 of the Act lays down a rather exhaustive list as to what the powers of this organization are. And, it categorically provides the commission to look into complaints, to investigate, to take suo motu notice of matters, yani ki khud kisi matter ko pick up karna, and anything related to deprivation of women's rights, they have the ability to go into the heart of the matter and investigate it. Now, it is also one of the stipulated functions of the NCW to issue advisories, issue recommendations, make reports. Now, anytime, I think this is significant, that anytime, and it's very empowering, anytime that the NCW makes a report before, to the central government or to a state government, they're required to, in either the House of the Parliament or a state legislature, they're required to comment and say as to why we accept these remarks, why we don't accept these remarks, whether this report is acceptable or not. They're supposed to issue some sort of response to that particular report. But from what we've seen, most of these reports tend to be positive in nature. The NCW will hardly ever bring up an actual concern before the Parliament or a state legislature. So that power really goes sort of waste, even though I think it is one of the most important powers of the commission, because then you can get the legislature to think, you can get the legislature to act. But if they're not getting the right information, they're not going to act. The other thing is that, and I think Beena ji has already mentioned this, as the National Commission for SC, NST, it also has the powers of a civil court. The NCW also has these wide powers. They can summon and enforce attendance of persons. They can require discovery and production of documents. They can receive affidavits. They can examine witnesses. These are very wide powers. But the issue that I've seen that the NCW faces is, for example, there was some issue with Salman Khan having made derogatory remarks. He never showed up. There have been political leaders who've been asked to come and make a statement before the NCW. Nobody's taking the organization seriously. So when that happens, that power is somewhat lost also. Despite having all of these powers, and I think they can be put to good use, right? Of course, you can issue advisories to state legislatures and the Parliament, but there are also restrictions to these vast powers. For example, people will not come, as I just mentioned. police will ultimately have the power to determine whether or not they want to take up a case. Even if NCW goes ahead and investigates a crime, it is the police that will eventually decide whether they want to bring the case to a start and to a logical end. And in any case, ministries are not required to consult the NCW when they're making critical decisions. So I think these are also changes that we want to see over time as we refine the act, and perhaps we may see some amendments if there's a solid enough push for it. But these are concerns so far as the powers of the NCW are concerned. And despite these powers, the commission, one has to wonder why the commission continues to remain silent on so many significant, women's issues. I think the answer is intrinsically tied to the fact that these chairpersons and members of the commission are appointed by the central government. And, if precedent is any indicator, only those who prove allegiance to the governing party's politics will become members of the NCW. Now, this holds true for almost all of the 8 chairpersons so far. And never in the history of the NCW has it happened that a person who holds a political ideology contrary to that of the ruling party was appointed as a member of the chairperson. You can take, for example, the current chairperson. Prior to her appointment as a chairperson, she was a member of the media department of the BJP in Haryana, and was also a district secretary. Now, and I think one will be able to say the same for a lot of the others, because that's what happens. Whatever party rules, they determine who will toe the line and who will continue to comply. Now, I've had the good fortune of having spoken to Kamla Bhasin, who has worked for gender justice over 5 decades. Unfortunately, she's not here with us today. And she said something significant. She said, if there is any country in South Asia that has it all, feminist lawyers, journalists, academics, activists, it is India. And in every case, she said, we have them. In every state, we have them. And yet, with one exception, 1 or 2 exceptions, most of the commissions come with very little background on women's issues. Now, it's important to note that Section 3 of the NCW Act mandates that these women have significant experience with respect to women's rights and protection of women and their empowerment. But that doesn't really happen. Ideally, such commissions should be kept away from from political politics and party politics, and they should also, as far as possible, be experienced in such spaces. However, it's hard to separate politics from the appointment. You don't see that happen often. And this is because, as I mentioned earlier, the central government holds the power to appoint its members. And what the government, and you got to think about why this is happening. What government would want, as Anjali ji said, information is power. What government would want a person in that position to expose what's happening on ground? And members then conveniently choose allegiance to the political party that's ruling, as opposed to risking their own jobs. Because as you know, at least in the NCW, the members are of a cabinet secretary rank. And this is why, the institution is rendered toothless. But here I'd also like to say, when I've spoken about, sorry. Yeah, so I'd also like to give a few examples of when the NCW has been silent on other critical issues. Take, for example, when Ranjan Gogoi, the former Chief Justice, was accused of sexual harassment, the NCW had nothing to say. When the former Chief Justice of another former Chief Justice of India made a comment about why are women at the forefront of these protests, NCW did not say anything, but NCW takes offense to the fact that a person from another political party is called the president Rashtrapati. And one has to think, why is it that the NCW is able to be silent on the plight of, let's say, a Dalit woman who was at the forefront of the farmers' protest? Her nails were ripped off. She was beaten in police custody, but not a word came out of the NCW. What is it that allows the commission to turn a blind eye to Muslim women when they are auctioned online on the occasion of Eid? And what about the plight of Anganwadi workers who continue to protest, but NCW has said nothing? Now, of course, a lot of these are political issues. And as I said, intrinsically, the entire issue is tied to the fact that the political party will only appoint those people. Unless that changes, I don't think any difference would be made. Now, I think in 2014, we had made some progress in that direction. We witnessed, at least I would say, a right step in that direction. The Supreme Court had said in a matter in 2014 that the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, their selection procedure should be, there should be no political discretion in the selection procedure. And it ultimately led to some rules being framed and amendments being made. But we've not seen that so far as the NCW is concerned. Amrita had also shared an article with me right before the talk, and I happen to have read it also. The process of selection has been tweaked very recently in the chairperson of the NCW, as well as the NCPCR. They've been reappointed against the mandate of the Act. They were supposed to be appointed at max for a period of 2 years. However, they've found a legal loophole. The Solicitor General was brought in and he was asked to make a legal opinion, and relying on that legal opinion, which is basically just an interpretation of the words and or, decided that they should be able to continue. And this is now the third term for both the chief of the NCPCR as well as the NCW. Now, as I said, I spoke to Kamla Bhasinji a lot about these, and she was one of the leading developmental feminists and social scientists. She said that women had fought so hard for the formation of the NCW, and she said something remarkable. She said, I won't say that they have failed, but they've not even tried. Today, they're not even serious about being taken seriously, and that's saying something. So one can only hope that this changes, and it is important to have these discussions such as the one we're having today. I'm thankful for being a part of this, and it's important that we hold these institutions accountable. We have to keep asking these questions, because if we don't, then we're heading to a place where America's recently gotten. And that's how I like to look at it. What has transpired in America with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the right to abortion was a 50-year-old, well-settled legal precedent. It took only moments to strip the American women of this hard-won right. And if anything, that decision serves as a lesson for our country that these rights are hard-won and they need to be protected. And that the bodies that are entrusted with protecting that right, they should function well. They should function in the interest of not just some women who hold a certain political ideology, but they should serve the interests of all women. So to hold these institutions accountable, and Amrita, you'd asked that question at the very beginning, what is it that we can do? We have to keep asking these questions. Perhaps, and I'm hopeful that we may see a change in the selection process at some point, because that is critical. And unless that changes, unless the fact that these people owe allegiance to the political parties that appoint them, that bit changes, it's going to be a very hard task uphill. There should also be, I think, better coordination between the central, which is the National Commission for Women, as well as the state commissions for women. It should not be that National Commission of Women does not cooperate with governments of states where they're not in power. It should not be that an NCW chief is calling out rapes and crimes against women only in Kerala or only in West Bengal or Rajasthan. And as I said, the issue of selection process will be critical moving forward. And I think that's my time.
Thank you so much, Mani, for that very detailed and interesting presentation that you made. And I think all our blood pressure went up when we heard I don't want to be impolite and use unparliamentary language, but about the wonderful things said by the various chairpersons of the NCW. I think it betrays not just the patriarchal thinking, but actually much more regressive way of thinking, and then one really questions why they're sitting there. So I'll briefly just do a quick Hindi translation. तो मनी ने हमें बताया कि 1992 में NCW एस्टैब्लिश हुआ था, महिला आयोग, और जिसका कि एक विचारधारा ये था कि एक स्वतंत्र बॉडी रहे जो कि देश भर में महिलाओं के अधिकारों को कैसे प्रोटेक्ट भी किया जाए और आगे कैसे बढ़ाया जाए। तो इस उम्मीद से ये आयोग बनाया गया था। लेकिन मनी ने हमें शुरू में ही 4-5 जो चेयरपर्सन और जो मेंबर्स हैं उन्होंने जो बातें अपनी रखी हैं उन्होंने उनको हमारे सामने रखा। तो वो सुन के आपको खुद ही पता चल जाता है कि आयोग में जो लोग बैठे हैं वो कहाँ तक जो आयोग का गठन जिस मकसद से हुआ था उस मकसद में वो कितना अपनी मान रखते हैं और कितना उसमें अपना सोच रखते हैं। उन्होंने कुछ तो हिंदी में ट्रांसलेट कर भी दिए थे, मैं दो तीन को मैं केवल ट्रांसलेट करूंगी हिंदी में। पहला उन्होंने बताया कि एक चेयरपर्सन ने बोला कि महिलाएं शिकायत इसलिए करती हैं उनके खिलाफ अत्याचार की जिससे कि वो पैसे बना पाए या फिर वो प्रॉपर्टी हड़प पाए। उन्होंने आगे बोला इन्हीं चेयरपर्सन ने कि जब यूपी में गैंग रेप का कॉम्पनसेशन इंक्रीज हुआ तो एकदम से केसेस भी इंक्रीज हो गए, मतलब कि ये महिलाएं केवल पैसे लेने के लिए ये कर रही थी। दूसरा उन्होंने बताया कि किस प्रकार से जो अभी जो आयुक्त हैं महिला आयोग की मुख्य आयुक्त जो है वो किस प्रकार से लव जिहाद की पूरे समय बातें करती रहती हैं, जबकि लव जिहाद तो कि महिलाओं के अधिकारों को ही एक तरीके से रोकने का एक मकसद है कि महिलाएं अपना खुल के अपना तय ना कर पाए कि वो किसके साथ अपना जीवन बिताना चाहती हैं। उन्होंने साथ में ये भी बोला कि एक महिला आयोग की एक मेंबर ने बोला कि रेप कम हो जाएंगे अगर महिलाएं कपड़े ठीक से पहने। एक और ने बोला कि ज्यादा स्वतंत्रता महिलाओं के लिए एक रिस्क है। एक और ने बोला कि यदि आपको कोई सेक्सी बोले तो उसको आप एक कॉम्प्लीमेंट की तरह लीजिए। तो मतलब इन सब से ज्यादा तो क्या ही कोई बता सकता है कि आयोग में किस प्रकार का काम चल रहा है, और बिल्कुल जिस प्रकार के कमेंट है उसी प्रकार का काम भी चल रहा है। मनी ने हमें बताया कि उन्होंने कई महिलाओं की मदद करी है NCW में शिकायतें डालने की, लेकिन जब शिकायतें गई हैं तो वहां से कोई जवाब नहीं आया है, शिकायतों के ऊपर कोई एक्शन नहीं लिया गया है और कोई कॉग्निसेंस नहीं लिया गया है। उन्होंने बताया कि उन्होंने जब RTI डाल के भी कुछ सवाल पूछे हैं महिला आयोग से तो उनको भी इधर उधर भगाने की कोशिश की है कि किस प्रकार से सवाल का जवाब न दिया जाए। यहाँ तक कि केंद्र सूचना आयोग ने महिला आयोग के बर्ताव के ऊपर बोला कि आप ये कैसा एंटी RTI बर्ताव कर रहे हैं, आपको सूचना के अधिकार कानून को फॉलो करना ही है। मनी ने हमें बताया कि इनके पास कई ताकतें हैं, सिविल कोर्ट की ताकत है। मुझे लगता है आज जितने भी हम आयोगों की बात कर रहे हैं उन सबके पास ही सिविल कोर्ट की पावर है। सिविल कोर्ट पावर होने का मतलब है कि आप एफिडेविट पे जानकारी मंगवा सकते हैं, आप अपने सामने हाजिरी लगवा सकते हैं, चाहे वो सीनियर अफसर भी हो, आप इंस्पेक्शन करवा सकते हैं दफ्तरों की। लेकिन उन्होंने बोला कि अगर हम देखें तो ये पावर ना के बराबर ही इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, मतलब जिन केसेस में करना चाहिए वो उन केसेस में तो बिल्कुल ही नहीं कर रहे। और उसका जो प्रमुख कारण जो मनी के हिसाब से वो इसलिए क्योंकि अगर देखा जाए तो इसके चेयरपर्सन और जो मेंबर है वो केंद्र सरकार नियुक्त करती है, तो केंद्र सरकार ऐसी लोगों को नियुक्त करती है जिनका की एक केंद्र सरकार से कोई जुड़ाव हो, जो पार्टी पावर में उनके साथ कोई जुड़ाव हो। साथ ही में मनी ने हमें ये भी बताया कि जैसा अंजलि ने और बीना दोनों ने पॉइंट आउट करा था कि कोई सरकार नहीं चाहती कि स्वतंत्र आयोग बैठ के दखल दे उनके कामों में, तो उसी प्रकार से और उसी सोच से ऐसे लोगों को बनाया जाता है जो कि चुप रहते हैं, और चुप नहीं रहते तो वैसा काम करते हैं जो कि सरकार ही चाहती है। मनी ने पूछा कि ये जो हमारी राष्ट्रीय महिला आयोग है, आप देखिए कि कब ये बोलती हैं और कब ये चुप रहती हैं। जब एक जो सीजेआई रहे हैं मिस्टर रंजन गोगोई, उनके खिलाफ जब सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट के केस आया तब एनसीडब्ल्यू ने कुछ नहीं कहा। जब इससे पूर्व सीजेआई ने बोला कि महिलाएं क्यों संघर्ष पे बैठी, उनको घर जाना चाहिए, तब महिला आयोग ने कुछ नहीं कहा। जब अभी हाल ही में फार्मर्स प्रोटेस्ट के दौरान एक दलित लीडर नवदीप कौर को पुलिस कस्टडी में बुरी तरह पीटा गया, तब महिला आयोग ने कुछ नहीं कहा। जब मुस्लिम महिला पत्रकारों को ऑक्शन किया गया इंटरनेट पे, तब महिला आयोग ने कुछ नहीं कहा। लेकिन अभी हाल ही में जब एक विपक्ष के नेता ने राष्ट्रपत्नी बोल दिया, तो उसका फटाफट उन्होंने कॉग्निसेंस ले लिया। तो वो यही बता रही है कि किस प्रकार से बिल्कुल सिलेक्टिव तरीके से फंक्शनिंग हो रही है। जहां पे रूलिंग पार्टी इन्वॉल्व होती है वहां चुप्पी आप धारण करके बैठ जाते हैं, जहां पे विपक्ष के खिलाफ कुछ लेना होता है तो आप लाइन में सबसे आगे लगे होते हैं। बताया मनी ने हमें कि उन्होंने आरटीआई डाल के जब पूछा कि हाथरस में जो इतना बड़ा कांड हुआ एक दलित लड़की के साथ, उसके ऊपर एनसीडब्ल्यू का उसमें क्या दखल रहा, तो उसका आज तक उनको जवाब नहीं मिल पाया। उन्होंने बताया कि उनकी जब बात हुई कमला भसीन जी के साथ, जो महिला आंदोलन से वर्षों से जुड़ी हुई थी, दशकों से, उन्होंने बताया कि कमला भसीन उनको बोलती थी कि जब हम ही ने लड़ाई करके ऐसे एक आयोग को बनवाया, उसको गठित करवाया, तो हमारी ही जिम्मेदारी है कि अब हम लड़के उसको उससे ठीक से काम भी कराएं। देश भर में इतनी सारी महिलाएं हैं, चाहे वो वकील हो, चाहे वो एक्टिविस्ट हो, चाहे वो एकेडमिक में हो, जो कि जिनको इन आयोगों में बैठना चाहिए, लेकिन कभी भी एक्चुअली ऐसी महिलाओं को नहीं वहां पे नियुक्त किया जाता जो कि महिलाओं अधिकारों के लिए काम के लिए जानी जाती है, और केवल ऐसे लोगों को बनाया जाता है जो कि उस पॉलिटिकल पार्टी से जुड़ी होती हैं और उन्हीं का काम आगे जाके करती हैं। मनी ने हमें आगे बताया कि अभी हाल ही में जो नियम है उनको बदला गया था, जिससे कि जो इस समय की एनसीडब्ल्यू चीफ है उनको एक और कार्यकाल दिया जाए, जबकि वैसे उनका कार्यकाल खत्म हो चुका है कानून के हिसाब से, लेकिन उसके बावजूद आधी रात के समय ये नियम बदला गया जिससे कि उनको एक और टर्म मिले। और अंत में अपनी बात खत्म करते हुए मनी ने बोला कि जिस प्रकार से अमेरिका में दशकों लड़ने के बाद महिलाओं को अबॉर्शन का राइट मिला, लेकिन कुछ चंद समय में ही वो राइट वापस ले लिया गया सुप्रीम कोर्ट द्वारा, रो वर्सेस वेड का जो अभी पूरा एक रोल बैक हुआ है, कहीं ऐसा ना हो कि अगर हम लोग अपनी नजर हटा लें महिला अधिकारों से और इन आयोगों से, तो कहीं ऐसा ना हो कि जिन चीजों के लिए हम इतने दशकों से लड़े हैं वो हमारे हाथों से दोबारा छीनी जाए। और इसलिए उन्होंने बोला कि बहुत जरूरी है कि हम आयोगों के ऊपर नजर बनाए रखें और उनसे सवाल जवाब का भी सिलसिला पूरा जारी रखें। तो आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मनी, आपने बहुत एक डिटेल्ड और इंटरेस्टिंग तरीके से पूरी बात हमारे सामने रखी। और अब मैं बुलाना चाहूंगी हेनरी तिफाग्ने को। Henri, you're welcome to now speak to us, and we now want to hear about the Human Rights Commissions and how are they performing. Over to you, Henri.
Good evening, Amrita. I hope I'm audible. I had some technical difficulties in getting in just now, so I hope I'm perfect for all of you there. Let me first of all start by congratulating NAPM for this effort. I mean, a continuous effort of bringing citizens to speak. And my apologies in public, Meera, I ditched you once. I want to publicly apologize to you for that. And thank all of you for having me over. Before I start, I want to start with we usually are are found to be people who are extremely critical. And I want to start with some good experiences about the NCW. I have had wonderful experiences with Mohini Giri. Whatever my previous speaker said, I have had her ensure that police pissed in their pants, literally. And I've seen it in the year 92, no, sorry, in the year 98, when she came to Dindigul. A lot of work that we did together with her. I've seen Purnima Advani, and I'm very cautious when I say this, literally terrorize over 300 police officers, which included an additional Director General of Police, 23 SPs, in a public hearing that she conducted in Madurai with the Tamil Nadu State Commission for Women. There have been wonderful examples of such personalities in different commissions. I've had the pleasure of working hand in hand with Shanta Sinha, a person whom I revere a lot, just to show that we have had women par excellence across commissions who have attracted our attention because of the work they did and provided us opportunities of working together. So if today we are critical about certain men in society, pardon me for being critical. These men deserve to be critical. I am supposed to speak on the NHRC. I'm not going to speak on the Act. We don't have time. You're giving me 20 minutes. My 20 minutes starts now. So I will be doing it under 4 different headings. And I will start about this institution, which is 29 years old, by doing exactly what Amrita said. What is the potential from past experience of this commission that you are talking about? And I want to start with that. But before that, let us record for ourselves that the NHRC was not the godfather or godmother of national human rights institutions in this country. It was the National Commission for Minorities, which was formed in the year 1990, followed by the National Commission for Women, followed in the year 1992. And because of that, and because they both existed, we have a very unique system, which the global community does not know. Our own judges who come do not know that we have a commission, not comprising of 5 members in the past and 7 members now, but along with deemed members who are chairpersons of the Women Commission, chairpersons of the Minority Commission, chairpersons of the Scheduled Caste Commission, chairperson of the Scheduled Tribe Commission, chairperson of the NCPCR, and now, of course, the Backward Class Commission, etc. So we have a unique system where we brought all human rights commissions together under the umbrella of the National Human Rights Commission, constituted in the year 1993. There are a number of things we are proud of this institution. And if we get angry today, we will start with what was our pride. I am proud that in 2002, it was the National Human Rights Commission. Justice Kanvilkar may have forgotten it. But I know Justice Kanvilkar is on the list to be the next NHRC chairperson by what he has done to civil liberties in this country. And for Justice Kanvilkar, I want him to remind him that the first institution that went to the Supreme Court on the Gujarat riots was the NHRC. Was the NHRC under Justice Verma. We are all proud of it. We might have 102 differences with certain people at that point of time. But the fact is, historically, this is the institution that went. In the Gujarat earthquakes that went there, earlier to that, the commission was bold enough to appoint an ombudsman committee comprising of a civil society activist, Gagan Sethi, along with IPS officer, Mr. Nambudri, both of whom were supposed to settle disputes that related to the earthquake. This is a model. They may not have followed it later in the tsunami in Tamil Nadu, but they did it in Gujarat. And I always used to remind them, this was your practice, your best practice that we are asking you to follow in Tamil Nadu. In 2001, when we went to Durban, on the whole question of the World Conference Against Racism in Durban, let's not forget, Justice Verma had consultations, public consultations that he called workshops. I remember in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in Delhi, where they discussed whether caste will fall within the ambit of this global discussion on race. That was done. They took a position and then went to Durban and stood with civil society, with the organization that Beena represents today, the National Campaign for Dalit Human Rights, which was present there with 250 activists from across the country. I happen to have the privilege of also being there. These are all potential. Let's not forget that in 1995, TADA was not allowed to continue through a letter that was written by the chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission, then Justice Venkatachalya, to all the parliamentarians. When I say so, it also means that today people don't have those kind of boldness, courage, involvement, knowledge, nothing. He was followed by Justice Verma, who came in 2002 and ensured that POTA has gone away from our law books. These are all contributions of the NHRC. Let us not forget that. Let us not forget that they started task forces to bring civil society together. I fought with Justice Verma. I'm proud I fought with Justice Verma. I have my letter that I wrote to Justice Verma. And I apologized to Justice Verma. And I said, if I've hurt you, I apologize because you are senior in age, in experience. But don't forget, my letter came out of the National Human Rights Commission and the need for it to abide by Paris principles. Believe me, friends, he allowed me to come back to his room, not invited, allowed me. I was scared outside. The only witness to that is today the Vice Chancellor, our good friend, who's a Vice Chancellor in Bangalore, who used to be with the NHRC earlier. I'll get his name. Murthy. Murthy was his PA and told me, Verma wants you to come in. And I did go inside and he said, please take a seat. And I took a seat after writing a 10-page letter telling him why we protested against the NHRC. I was then brought into the NHRC in the core group of NHRCs. And the day when I left the NHRC, when he left the NHRC, he had the privilege of sitting next to me, or I had the privilege of sitting next to him. And he whispered into my ears and said, do you remember that day when you entered into my room? This was the type of civil society NHRC relationship that we have had. And therefore, when we criticize these commissions, my dear friends, we criticize them because we love them. These are our institutions. They don't belong to them. I used to tell some of these members, you come and go. We will remain forever. You will come and go, but Anjali will remain forever. As long as she is alive, she will be in the field. That is exactly what we used to tell them. And that is exactly what I'm telling Justice Arun Mishra today, when he is lobbying, not in India. He doesn't want to meet you and me in India. He wants to meet the NGOs, the INGOs in Brussels. He's interested in meeting them in Geneva. And our embassies are facilitating meetings, engaging advocacy institutions in these places at heavy cost because they want to dialogue with civil society. What the hell are you doing with us here? You have never dialogued with us. The pandemic was always the reason for you never to dialogue with us. And therefore, this is the potential of this institution. So we are not running down our institution. I always used to say, my dear friends, I don't want the Indian NHRC to be downgraded. We are all here to ensure the NHRC is upgraded. We are not here for its downgrading. You may call it A grade, B grade. We want one grade, and that is an upgraded NHRC, which will uphold our democratic and fundamental rights, human rights in this country. And we'll do it hand in hand with the NCW, hand in hand with the Minority Commission, hand in hand with the Child Rights Commission, with the Scheduled Caste Commission, Scheduled Tribe Commission, etc. Now, friends, let's not forget, the NHRC doesn't know it, but we should know that the NHRC is not an island in this country. We have 9 national human rights institutions and 170 state human rights institutions. But the NHRC is bound by the Paris principles, the global United Nations principles on which the guidelines have been evolved, on which these institutions have to function. So while they are bound by the Protection of Human Rights Act, they are also bound to adhere to the standards set by the United Nations through the UN principles of 1992, known as Paris Principles, which speaks and says, be independent. Mr. Arun Mishra, be independent. Be diverse. be diverse, be accountable, be cooperative, be transparent, be accountable, be transparent. This and involve diversity in your composition. Don't have old men in black robes alone, is what the UN principles tells us, Mr. Arun Mishra. And that is why we are talking to you. Because you are a party to the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions, which is your family. You belong to that family, and the guiding principles are your family's guidelines. And all that we demand is adhere to it. Don't bluff them. That is what we are saying. Now, these guidelines are evaluated through a self-assessment, peer assessment form, known as the Subcommittee on Accreditation of the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions, that the Indian NHRC on 2 or 3 occasions had the privilege to even chair. We are proud of those days. You gave the leadership. The Indian NHRC was a founding member of the Asia Pacific Forum of National Human Rights Institutions. This body has a subcommittee on accreditation, which evaluates whether they are Paris Principles compliant or not. If they are, then they get an A grade. And if you get an A grade, you go to Geneva and enter the United Nations. If you don't get an A grade, you go to Geneva and your embassy will look after you, but you can't enter the United Nations. That's the difference. They presently have an A grade. But the challenge, my dear friends, was that I learned this from Sri Lanka. I always thought these people can never be questioned. I learned from Sri Lanka. I tell this in public. I learned it from Malaysia. I learned it when 2008, when the Sri Lankan Commission was downgraded. And I said, who the hell could downgrade these institutions? And it was my colleagues and friends, my comrades in Sri Lanka who taught me this lesson. And then I got the baton from Malaysia, where the Malaysian Human Rights Commission was also going to be downgraded. They changed the legislation. And I was day and night learning from them and speaking for them on platforms that we were commonly in. The lessons I learned were from Sri Lanka and Malaysia. And I came back and I said, in 2010, after the Malaysian Commission had changed itself and publicly had the humility to accept it was civil society which forced us to change. I don't know who will be humble enough in India ever to say this, ever to say this. And I learned and I started saying, let's put together a report, because it's a civil society report which can make these people accountable to us. And I had the pleasure of doing it collectively with a variety of people. And in 2011, in 2016, and in 2017, at 3 different occasions, we had reports presented, which I can share in the. I'll ask my colleague Rini to put it in the chat box, and you can have access to it. But what did these reports say? What did the NHRC's, the subcommittee on accreditation, say in terms of these reports? They said something wonderful. In the year 2011, they said, I go very fast. Your composition and pluralism doesn't exist. For many years, NHRC men believe no women can be there. Friends, I mean exactly what I'm saying. And I'm the culprit for somebody coming inside, and I will publicly acknowledge that also. The appointment of the Secretary General and the Director General of Investigation of the NHRC are only IAS and IPS, and this is not fair. How many institutions, how many staff members have NGOs handled in our institutions? At one point of time, I've handled 300 staff members. The NHRC has only 300 staff members. Why should not civil society people be capable of being the managing these staff? Cannot Aruna Roy manage this? Could not our Harsh Mandar manage this? I'm giving very, very controversial names, but it is for the state to respond. Could not have Shanta Sinha managed it? These all could have been Secretary Generals. And Director General of Investigation need not be a police officer. It can be us. We are investigating cases for the last 35, 40 years of our lives. We will do nothing but that. Then they said their relationship with civil society is extremely poor. I didn't say this. This is their subcommittee on accreditation which told them that. We told them your complaints handling is in a mess. You have complaints against the police, you send it back to the police. Yesterday, a colleague of mine called me and said he had one who was a human rights defender had a threat against him. I was in a meeting and I was called and said, the DSP has called me. Why? One Henri Tiphagne has sent a complaint on your behalf. Come to the DSP's office. I said, politeness. So I didn't use the word I said there. I said, ask that DSP if he has the courage to call me on the phone. You will never enter that office. And entering that office, I will make a second complaint to the NHRC that he is undertaking reprisals against you. That stop. Stop doing this is what the subcommittee told them. And told them, you have annual reports which are age old here. Today, what is known outside in the world of the NHRC, we are in 2022, Anjali and Amrita. And what is available is 2017-18. 2017-18. They can't even give us an annual report, not even fit for that. This is what was told in 2011, and they said, please attend to this. We give you an A grade. It is a conditional A grade. That was Balakrishnan's time. God knows who gave that commission. I don't say Balakrishnan did it. Somebody gave them the advice to challenge it in the court in Geneva. They got a legal opinion. The NHRC won on the ground that the accreditation cannot be a conditional. The condition was that they should report the following year of what they did here. But what I want you people to understand is civil society could hold them accountable. This is a lesson I came back with. We may not have succeeded fully, but they were answerable to me. Because they were answerable to me, dear friends, today I don't have an FCRA from 2012 onwards. The reason is that and nothing else. Instead, I have the CBI sitting on the first floor for the past 6 months. That is the cost we pay for a good NHRC, good national human rights institution in our country. I say this because tomorrow you need to know this if I am in trouble, because you will all be people who will stand with me. 2011, 2016 was their next accreditation process. Same repetition. Composition, pluralism, your selection and appointment. You never announce vacancies. You never call for applications. You never fix criteria. You select whomever you want. The same question about the Secretary General and the Director General of Investigation. The same question of political, no, this is a new one, political representation on NHRAs. My colleague there who spoke, sorry, I can't get your name, on the National Commission for Women, you spoke very well, Mani. You mentioned this. The NHRC was told in 2016 that many of your deemed members in the SC Commission, in the National Commission for Women, in the National Commission of Minorities are parliamentarians who fought elections on a party ticket. How can you call them independent members of the NHRC because they are deemed members? This was pointed out. And you all know better than me how relevant that is. The members of then the cooperation with human rights institutions, access to NHRI's complaints handling program, and once again, the annual repetition of 2011 with 1 or 2 editions. And they said for the first time, your accreditation is deferred. They had it. They had it. 2017, they went back again. This time they went back very strong. They used all their powers, is all that I can tell you. They did all their contributions, is all that I can tell you. A lot of contributions were made to the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions and the Asia Pacific Forum of National Human Rights Institutions. 2017, when they went back again after 1 year of deferral, believe me, it has never happened to any other country. Either you get or you don't get. But here, the NHRC promised them that they will pass a law to ensure that all the above recommendations that I mentioned earlier would be followed. That law never came. But in 2017, December, they were granted an A grade. But once again, composition and pluralism was reiterated. The selection and appointment process was reiterated. The appointment of the Secretary General was reiterated. In short, everything else was reiterated and told them, make a law. No law came. And 2018, they went into their 25th anniversary gloriously with an A grade. They were furious. Now you can understand. But small stories should also come inside. I was challenged my FCRA with the NHRC because they are supposed to protect the right to association of human rights defenders. And by closing your FCRA, what they do is they are affecting my right to association. So I made a complaint in October 2016, my dear friends. The year is important. That was the time when the accreditation process was closed, deferred for a year. Believe me, the NHRC sent a notice to the Ministry of Home Affairs quoting the position of the UN Special Rapporteur on freedom of association on how HRD, human rights defenders, should not be targeted, blah, 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 blah. You will get all the words there. The MHA replied. The NHRC told the MHA, this was Justice Dattu. The NHRC told the MHA, we are not satisfied with your response. We feel so glorious when we hear all this. Second time they sent a reply. Second time also it was returned saying it is not satisfactory. They had to satisfy the global community that was going to accredit them, saying we are on the side of human rights defenders. That case, my dear friends, for brevity, I'm saying in 2016 we filed, in 2017 this drama of going up and down went. Then they adjourned it technically, saying we now come to understand that there's a writ petition pending in the Supreme Court. Why the hell somebody else went to the Supreme Court? That is Justice Deepak Gupta's judgment pending there. There is your writ petition pending in the Delhi High Court. Therefore, in January 2021 alone, my case before the NHRC was closed. But just see how willing they are for their accreditation to play drama with us. They thought they can play ping pong with us. We will play it back with them. So that was what happened in 2017. They got it back, but all this drama was done. And then the quid pro quo was that for the first time in 10 years, the NHRC agreed to undergo a capacity assessment. My dear friends, I will share that report. That report is better than any civil society report. Much better than any civil society report. Friends, I know it's time. Amrita is already there. 1 minute more and I'll finish. The time is not for complacency any longer. 2023 March is their accreditation. And it is time we in Indian civil society put our foot together and say, we are not bothered about your downgrading. We are bothered about your being upgraded in quality. You are upgraded in your commitment. You are upgraded in your adherence to the Constitution and upholding the Constitution. Don't forget that they have a power to visit jails, but never went and visited Taloja jail till today. Why? They have not stepped into the jails in Delhi and met our good friend Kuram Parvez. They have not gone to the Meerut jail and met Kapan. Why? And they tell the global community we are adhering to international norms. My dear friends, we cannot allow this to continue. I know there are some in civil society whom I revere a lot who tell me, Henri, don't waste your time with them. I'm not wasting my time with them because I have no other things to do. We do it because we need to let the global community know that this institution deserves to be locked and sealed till they behave themselves. They have locked the seal. They have locked the Jammu and Kashmir State Human Rights Commission with over 7,000 complaints that were pending and being disposed. They did not even have the guts to take those complaints to themselves at the time of the abrogation of 370. So it is important, I'll finish here, that we join together. We challenge the NHRC and we tell the NHRC, your advocacy in Geneva and Brussels will not matter. Your advocacy has to be with the grounded voices. These grounded voices have to be the basis for your advocacy. And we need to make the country know that those who are in governance in the NHRC are people, most of whom do not deserve to be there. And the last word is, we all said you don't have women. We all said you don't have NGOs. So they brought Madam Jyotika Kaldra and said, Henri, have it. This is what you asked for, have it. We have got you a representative. I don't need to say anything more in a public platform. She was a good friend. We fought with her the day she left the commission. I didn't send a message that day. Later, I sent a message and I asked her, at least now can you let me know, Jyotika Kaldra, why you resigned from the commission? After appointment, you resigned from the commission. And then you came back into the commission in 2017 quietly. Why did you resign? Your resignation letter is the basis for me being inspired that we continue to fight the NHRC in these fora. I will leave it here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henri, for that extremely inspiring and energizing and the needed kick for all of us to know why we need to fight. I'll do a brief and quick translation in Hindi. तो हेनरी ने सबसे पहले तो हमें बोला कि हम क्यों लड़ रहे हैं इन आयोगों के लिए, हम क्यों इस समय गुस्सा हैं कि आयोग ठीक से काम नहीं कर रहे, क्योंकि उन्होंने बोला कि जब आयोग ठीक से काम करते हैं तो उसका जबरदस्त एक इम्पैक्ट देखने को मिलता है। उन्होंने बताया किस प्रकार से उन्होंने पूर्व महिला आयोग के चीफ्स के साथ काम किया हुआ है, किस प्रकार से एनएचआरसी जो कि 1993 में सेटअप हुआ था, 2002 में वो पहली और अकेली ऐसी बॉडी थी जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट लेके गई गुजरात के दंगों का मुद्दा। उन्होंने बताया कि 2001 में जस्टिस वर्मा जब वहां के चीफ थे तो किस प्रकार पूरे देश भर में ये कॉन्फ्रेंसेस और चर्चा हुई कि क्या कास्ट को जो ग्लोबल डायलॉग ऑन रेस है क्या उसमें हम कैसे जोड़ सकते हैं। उन्होंने बताया कि 1995 में जस्टिस वेंकटचलैया जब चीफ थे तो उनके एक चिट्ठी के कारण टाडा जो कि उस समय का यूएपीए तरीके का कानून था उसको कैसे रोक दिया गया। तो हेनरी ने बोला कि आज जो हमें गुस्सा आ रहा है, आज जो हम एक संघर्ष कर रहे हैं कि आयोग ठीक से काम करे, ये इसलिए हम कर रहे हैं क्योंकि ये आयोग हमारे हैं। सरकारें आती हैं, सरकारें जाती हैं, चेयरपर्सन आते हैं, चेयरपर्सन जाते हैं, लेकिन जो लोग जमीन पर लड़ रहे हैं, जो लोग अलग अलग मुद्दों को लेके, चाहे वो महिला अधिकार हो, चाहे वो आरटीआई हो, चाहे वो एससी एसटी के अधिकार हो, उन सबको लेकर जो लोग लड़ रहे हैं, ये जो आयोग है वो उनके एक तरीके की आवाज बनते हैं। जो लोग पीड़ित है जमीन पे वो उनकी आवाज बनते हैं। और इसलिए हेनरी ने बोला कि मैं ये किसी आयोग को किसी सरकार का आयोग नहीं मानता, ये तो हमारे आयोग है और इसलिए इनके लिए लड़ना बहुत जरूरी है। उन्होंने बताया, हेनरी ने हमें बताया कि अगर हम देखें तो जो भारत का जो मानव अधिकार आयोग है वो एक बहुत ही यूनिक तरीके से फ्रेम्ड है, क्योंकि जितने बाकी मानव अधिकार के आयोग हैं, जैसे उसमें हो गया अपना महिला आयोग हो गया, एससी एसटी आयोग हो गया, बाकी जितने ऐसे आयोग हैं उन सबके चेयरपर्सन इस मानव अधिकार आयोग के सदस्य माने जाते हैं। तो एक तरीके से ये सारे आयोगों का एक प्लेटफॉर्म भी बन जाता है जहाँ पे कि सारे मुद्दे मानव अधिकार के यहाँ पे आके एक तरीके से केंद्रित होते हैं। उन्होंने बताया कि अगर हम देखें तो जो भारत का एनएचआरसी है वो पेरिस प्रिंसिपल जो एक कॉन्फ्रेंस में तय हुए थे कि देश भर में नहीं विश्व भर में मानव अधिकार आयोगों को कैसे चलना चाहिए, उसके लिए कुछ मूल तय किए गए थे, उसके हम सिग्नेटरी हैं। और जिसके तहत ये बोला गया है कि आयोग को, मानव अधिकार आयोग को स्वतंत्र होना है, डाइवर्स होना है, यानी कि अलग अलग विभिन्न जगहों से लोगों को उसका हिस्सा बनना है, और ना केवल ज्योग्राफिकल जगहों से लेकिन अलग अलग बैकग्राउंड से वहां पे लोगों को होना जरूरी है। उनको जवाबदेह होना चाहिए और उनको पारदर्शी होना चाहिए। और ये जो पेरिस प्रिंसिपल्स हैं इसके बेसिस पे हर कुछ सालों के बाद विश्व भर में एक असेसमेंट किया जाता है कि हर एक देश का मानव अधिकार का आयोग कैसा है। तो हेनरी ने बताया कि शुरू में जब उन्होंने काम शुरू करा तो उनको लगता था कि उनका काम है कि भारत के आयोग का एक्रेडिटेशन एकदम अच्छा मिले, ये काम है सिविल सोसाइटी का। लेकिन जब उन्होंने देखा कि कैसे और देशों में, श्रीलंका में, मलेशिया में सिविल सोसाइटी जब एकदम जबरदस्त तरीके से असेसमेंट्स कर रही थी और ये पा रही थी कि जब कमियां हैं मानव अधिकार आयोगों में तो उनको हाईलाइट किया जाए विश्व स्तर पे, जिससे कि वो आयोग ठीक से काम करें, तो तब से उन्होंने बताया कि वो बहुत बारीकी से देखते हैं भारत के आयोग को, और जहां पे भी अनियमितताएं पाई जाती हैं उनको वो साझा करते हैं लोगों के बीच। उन्होंने बताया कि जब ये पूरा टास्क फोर्स बिठाया जाता है विश्व स्तर पे और जब भारत के भी मानव अधिकार आयोग का एक जांच पड़ताल की जाती है कि वो किस प्रकार से काम कर रहा है इन सब प्रिंसिपल्स पे, तो उन्होंने बताया कि सिविल सोसाइटी की भी ओर से एक रिपोर्ट जाती है जिसका कि अच्छे से इस्तेमाल भी किया जाता है। उन्होंने हमें बताया कि अगर हम पिछले 2-3 बार जब ऐसा एक रिपोर्ट निकला है तो उनमें क्या मेन मुद्दे हैं। सबसे मेन मुद्दा निकल के आता है कि कोई डाइवर्सिटी ही नहीं है, कोई कभी महिला चेयरपर्सन ही नहीं बनी हमारे मानव अधिकार आयोग की। हम देखते हैं कि केवल जो जजेस एक किस्म के, एक क्लास के, एक कास्ट के, एक ही रिलीजियस बैकग्राउंड के ही तरीके के मतलब लोग बनते जाते हैं मानव अधिकार आयोग में, उसमें बिल्कुल डाइवर्सिटी नहीं है। उन्होंने हमें बताया कि अगर हम देखें तो जो डायरेक्टर जनरल है इन्वेस्टिगेशन के मानव अधिकार आयोग की, उसमें केवल वो आईपीएस या आईएएस के अफसरों को रखते हैं, बिल्कुल इंडिपेंडेंट रिप्रेजेंटेशन नहीं होता। यदि हम देखें तो वो अपना एनुअल रिपोर्ट समय से नहीं कभी भी बनाते। अभी उन्होंने बताया कि 2022 चल रहा है और इस समय अगर आप उनकी वेबसाइट पे जाके देखेंगे तो 2017 के बाद का उनका कोई भी एनुअल रिपोर्ट नहीं तैयार हुआ है। और इसके चलते हुए 2017 में जब ये जांच पड़ताल हुई विश्व भर में, तो भारत के मानव अधिकार आयोग को वो सर्टिफिकेशन नहीं मिला कि वो एक ए ग्रेड का आयोग है। तो ऐसा पहली बार हुआ विश्व में कि ग्रेड जब नहीं मिला सही से तो मानव अधिकार आयोग ने बोला अच्छा हम ना ठीक कर लेंगे, तो आप हमें समय दे दीजिए। तो उस मामले को लंबित कर दिया गया और उसके बाद उन्होंने कुछ थोड़ा बहुत लेपापोती करी, जिसके बाद उनको दोबारा से ए ग्रेड मिला। तो हेनरी ने बताया कि ये एक बहुत बड़ा हमारे पास एक प्लेटफॉर्म है जहां पे हम ये दिखा सकते हैं कि आयोग को लेके क्या क्या दिक्कतें हैं, और ये कोई ऐसा नहीं है कि अपने आप मन घड़ंत बातें कहिए, ये बिल्कुल तथ्यात्मक तरीके से रिपोर्ट तैयार करके कि भाई आयोग में नियुक्तियां कैसे होती हैं, किस प्रकार के लोगों को लाया जा रहा है, कितनी बार आयोग ने जांच पड़ताल की है, कितने केसेस में आयोग ने दखल दिया है, कितनी बार आयोग ने अपनी जवाबदेही के लिए काम किया है, कितनी कितनी जानकारी आयोग पारदर्शी तरीके से अपने वेबसाइट पे डाल रहा है। इन सबको वो सामने रखते हैं इस उम्मीद से कि जो दबाव बनेगा कम से कम उससे तो आयोग का कुछ एक बेटर परफॉर्मेंस रहे और लोगों के प्रति और मानव अधिकार के प्रति जो एक इसकी कल्पना थी उसके ऊपर ये आके खड़े हो। साथ में उन्होंने ये भी बताया कि एक चीज अगर हम देखें तो एनएचआरसी के पास पावर है कि वो जेल में जाके विजिट कर सकते हैं। तो उन्होंने पूछा कि क्या वो उस जेल में गए जहाँ पे फादर स्टैन स्वामी की डेथ हुई थी कस्टडी में, क्यों नहीं जाते वो उस जेल में। साथ ही में बताया हेनरी ने हमें कि जब जम्मू और कश्मीर का आर्टिकल 370 का एब्रोगेशन हुआ आज से 2-3 साल पहले, वहां के जो ह्यूमन राइट्स कमीशन है, राज्य स्तरीय जो मानव अधिकार आयोग है, वहां 7,000 शिकायतें लंबित थी। उन शिकायतों का क्या हुआ? राष्ट्रीय आयोग ने अपने पास उन शिकायतों को क्यों नहीं बुलाया? तो हेनरी ने अपनी बात यहीं पे खत्म करी कि हम तो आयोगों के लिए लड़ेंगे और लड़ेंगे इसलिए क्योंकि ये हमारे आयोग हैं, ये हमारे अधिकार के लिए बने हुए हैं, और इसलिए हम तो इनको बिल्कुल भी ऐसा नहीं है कि नजरअंदाज करके छोड़ देंगे और जैसा भी वो बने वैसा उनको बनने देंगे। So thank you very much, Henri, for that. And now we'll just go back to each of our speakers for a quick round of questions. There is a couple of questions in the chat box, and we're also opening up the stage at this point if there's another question. So the first question is, right, so the question is, what can people do to bring about the necessary changes in the attitude of the people sitting in these statutory bodies. And they said that we in Punjab have started the campaign of naming and shaming erring information commissioners, which is showing some positive results, but it is still too little and too meager. Anjali, would you like to take that question? And in the meantime, chat box खुला है, यदि आपका कोई सवाल हो या आप अपना हाथ रेस करके सवाल पूछना चाहते तो जरूर पूछिए.
मेरे ख्याल से हमारे देश में बहुत सारे मुहिम चले हैं सक्सेसफुली, तमाम कैंपेन्स हैं जिनसे हम बहुत कुछ सीख सकते हैं. और एक जो सीख किसी भी आप कैंपेन मूवमेंट जो हमारे देश में जिसने पॉजिटिव चेंज, प्रोग्रेसिव चेंज लाए हैं, उन्हें अगर हम देखें तो ये है कि लोग लगे रहते हैं. और मेरा मानना है कि कितनी भी फाशिस्ट सरकार हो, कितनी भी कोशिश की जाए कि इंस्टीट्यूशंस को ब्रेक कर दिया जाए, अगर लोग इंस्टीट्यूशंस का महत्व समझते हैं और अगर वो चाहते हैं कि इंस्टीट्यूशंस लोकतंत्र को जिंदा रखें, हमारे अधिकारों का हनन ना हो, तो इसमें कोई ना हमारे पास चॉइस है, कोई दो राय नहीं है कि लोगों को दायित्व लेना होगा, लोगों को पहल करनी होगी. अगर कमीशंस में भी लोग ही बैठे हैं, अगर कमीशंस में जो लोग बैठे हैं वो ये देखते हैं कि लगातार जिस तरीके का वो बिहेवियर कर रहे हैं, जिस तरीके के वो ऑर्डर्स दे रहे हैं, क्या काम कर रहे हैं, उस पर लोगों ने निगरानी बना रखी है और उनके ऊपर लोग टिप्पणी कर रहे हैं, प्रेशर बना रहे हैं. आपने नेमिंग एंड शेमिंग की बात की, बहुत सारे तरीके हैं जिससे कि प्रेशर बनाया जा सकता है. तो हम मानते हैं कि चेंज इज पॉसिबल और हम जरूर सारे एवेन्यूज को एक्सप्लोर करें. हेनरी ने बहुत सारे एवेन्यूज की बात करी, नेशनल इंटरनेशनल एवेन्यूज हैं जहां पर ये सारे मुद्दे उठाने की जरूरत है. मेरे ख्याल से अमृता बहुत ज्यादा समय शायद इसके बाद नहीं होगा, बस एक दो चीजें बोलकर ही मैं अपनी बात समाप्त करना चाहती हूँ कि देखिए, तो जो मैंने बाकी सब वक्ताओं की भी बात सुनी, बहुत जरूरी है कि सही तरीके से अपॉइंटमेंट्स हो सारे कमीशंस में. अगर हम चाहते हैं कि कमीशंस हमारे लिए काम करें, ना कि जो सत्ता में बैठे लोग हैं उनके लिए काम करें, तो कमीशंस की जो अपॉइंटमेंट्स है उसमें हमारा लगातार निगरानी और हस्तक्षेप जरूरी है. टाइमली अपॉइंटमेंट्स होनी चाहिए और नॉन आर्बिट्ररी तरीके से अपॉइंटमेंट्स होनी चाहिए, जो केवल तभी पॉसिबल है जब पारदर्शी तरीके से अपॉइंटमेंट्स होंगी. तो अपॉइंटमेंट्स में पारदर्शिता, बहुत बार हमने देखा है कि लोग सोचते हैं अरे ये हमारा मुद्दा नहीं है, पर ये फाइनली हमारे अधिकारों का ही मुद्दा है, क्योंकि जब तक सही लोग कमीशंस में नहीं बैठेंगे तो जैसी बातें मनी ने हमें सुनाई, कैसी कैसी बातें हो रही है, बीना ने बताई, वो होती ही रहेंगी, उन्हें रोका जाने का कोई तरीका नहीं है. और मैं तो बहुत ऑप्टिमिस्टिक हूँ. मुझे लगता है कि जब हम लोग लड़ते हैं तो हम लोग जीतते हैं. तो बहुत जरूरी है कि लड़ाई जारी रहे, संघर्ष जारी रहे. इंफॉर्मेशन कमीशंस में जो सबसे तकलीफ की बात रही है वो है कि सरकार के दबाव में जो कमिश्नर्स हैं वो कभी भी अपने पावर्स का इस्तेमाल नहीं करते. पावर्स ऑफ डिसिप्लिनरी एक्शन, पेनल्टी लगाने के पावर्स का इस्तेमाल नहीं करते. एक सिग्नल जाता है कि लोगों के अधिकारों का हनन भी होगा, सूचना नहीं भी मिलेगी तो डरने की कोई बात नहीं है. और जब लोगों ने दबाव बनाया है तो हमने देखा है कि कम से कम अब शो कॉज नोटिसेस ज्यादातर केसेस में आने, वो इट्स अ स्मॉल बिगिनिंग बट बहुत अच्छा उसका एक इम्पैक्ट भी देखने के लिए मिलता है. पेनल्टी केवल 4% केसेस में लगाता है कमीशन, जहां पे लगनी चाहिए, ये रिसर्च दिखा रहा है. लेकिन हम मानते हैं कि कहीं पर भी किसी मौके को हमें छोड़ना नहीं चाहिए. कमिश्नर्स को, आपने नेमिंग एंड शेमिंग की बात करी, हमें कमिश्नर्स को लगातार याद दिलाना होगा, जहां पे भी जो भी कमीशन है कि आपको सैलरी लेने के लिए नहीं, आपको सरकार की बड़ाइयां करने के लिए और उनका काम करने के लिए नहीं रखा गया है, लोगों के लोकतांत्रिक अधिकारों के बचाव के लिए आपका काम है। तो मैं अपनी बात यही समाप्त करती हूँ। धन्यवाद।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद अंजलि आपका। Beena, over to you next. Actually, the same question, that what is it that's possible? You shared with us that in more than half the country, we don't even have such commissions constituted. So what's the way forward, and your closing remarks, if any, in about 2 minutes?
Yeah, thanks. I think Anjali has covered most of it, but just to say that I don't know, if naming and shaming will really help the cause, or it will further, many of us, like Henri already told about FCRA, so that is giving another, but that doesn't mean we can't hold them accountable. So I think there are certain processes that we can be part of. I think that engagement, definitely, no matter how much we feel ideologically very different from many of these members, I think the continuous engagement and continuous, asking them or demanding that they play their role. I think that is really important, either through a form of protest, either through petitions, either through filing more and more complaints with them. I think we need to encourage, that is one of the things I really admire Henri ji for, because, he's continuously pushing to file more and more complaints. And I think that is the only way that we can hold them accountable at this point, when, anything that we say or anything that we are doing, all our actions are very, very closely monitored. So I think we have to look at what is the best way forward, keeping in mind that we have to still continue to hold these institutions to account.
Right. Thank you, Beena, and thank you for also highlighting the kind of backlash that's coming against people who are raising these questions, like Henri mentioned, and I think I forgot to translate that, कि Henri ने बताया कि जब उन्होंने हस्तक्षेप दिया इस पूरे मुद्दे में कि मानवाधिकार आयोग कैसे चल रहा है, तो उनके संगठन का HCRA तो कैंसिल हुआ ही, लेकिन आज भी उनके खिलाफ CBI की इंक्वायरीज चल रही हैं, और वो हमको पता है, हम बहुत बारीकी से वो केस को भी देख रहे हैं। मतलब सभी लोगों को उसमें, जितने भी लोग एसोसिएटेड है, सबके खिलाफ नोटिस निकाले गए हैं, सबको पूरे दिन तंग किया जाता है कि अब ये इंक्वायरी है, अब ये कागज लाइए। तो वो भी हमें पता है कि इस समय जो सवाल उठा रहे हैं जो आप सब लोग, उनके ऊपर क्या बीत रही है। सो थैंक यू फॉर दैट, बीना। Over to you, Mani, and I'm just wondering that, just as all of you were talking, and I think one of the themes that runs across is that people who are there don't really care about the right that they are sitting in that institution which it is supposed to protect. So I'm wondering whether we should actually have a public conversation where people are asked about their views. What are your views on women's rights before you're appointed to the Women's Commission? So Mani, over to you.
I think, yeah, that's a very interesting question, because if you look at the current chief of the NCW, she had in fact tweeted very regressive and derogatory remarks against several people, political leaders included, of the opposing party. And the fact that nobody questioned that, or that nobody even raised a red flag, is problematic, right? So at least that much due diligence should be done. So I mean, I agree with you. Perhaps we should have those discussions. At least the public should be part of that process in some way, if not entirely, when making these decisions. I think that's one way to go about it. Of course, the selection process itself is rigged. I've spoken about that. But even other than the selection process, I think the powers of the NCW are not being put to their ideal use. And of course, that goes back into the question of the selection process and why these people don't exercise those powers. But I think there's now, we're at a stage where there's complete distrust. To begin with, I think people need to start taking these institutions seriously. Now, the women that never found answers to their complaints, who wrote pages worth of complaints and never received an answer, of course, what do they think about, what do you think they think about the NCW? They think it's a toothless body. And that, of course, is unfortunate, but I think that needs to change. Only tweets should not be responded to selectively. Action should be taken in every case, at least do as much as an acknowledgement. That's the least that can be done, but it doesn't happen. So I think we can start with creating some trust in the organization, and it has to come from all sides. It has to come from the public itself, it has to come from the organization, it has to come from the government and the ministries that the NCW works with. And finally, someone spoke about naming and shaming. I think I would say there are provisions for imposing some sort of sanctions or consequences for people who don't function as per the mandate of the act. Now it's a different thing because these are appointees of the government and speak the language of the government. They're never sacked, but those provisions are there. It's just a matter of bringing those up and to keep asking those questions and to keep holding these people accountable. I think I'll end with that.
Right. Thank you, Mani. And, we know that historically also the issue of naming and shaming has always had its proponents and descendants on whether people think it's appropriate or not. But I remember a colleague was saying one day that we should just publicize some of all these ridiculous orders by the Information Commission. And maybe in the evening when they go out to socialize, someone will laugh at them and say, ki, yaar, ye kya order aapne pass kar diya. So maybe it does have power. Maybe we need to start doing some of this.
Social media has made it easier to put things out there, to be able to write. And if not write for certain platforms, at least write a blog or a tweet.
Absolutely.
I think that's a power we should definitely exercise. Yeah.
But I think what you said is also important, that we shouldn't just stop at this brickbat kind of thing, but actually there are, in each of these laws, there are provisions where you can file complaints against members and chairperson. I think we should do it. So what if we lose? We're in any case losing all around. So, but at least it will come on record. I think bringing things on record at a time like this is key. Henri, over to you. And now my question is slightly different, because today we were also supposed to have a speaker talking to us about NCPCR. Now today, all our 4 speakers, the primary concern was that, the institution is not so effective. It needs to be more effective. What can we do to make it more effective? On the other hand, we have NCPCR. And now I'm reading something from the judgment of Mohammed Zubair. The criminal law and its processes ought not to be instrumentalized as a tool of harassment. This was said not in the context of NCPCR, but in the context of the multiple FIRs against him. But I think people would not disagree with the comment that some institutions have actually become weapons in the hand of this government to target and harass those raising questions. Mani spoke to us about the NCW selectively picking up only opposition leaders and issuing notice, but NCPCR takes it to a whole new level. So my question to you, Henri, is this, that are you worried about the weaponization of NHRC, and how does one actually prevent that? So while we carry on the fight to make them more effective, make them accountable, but how do we stop them from becoming weapons of harassment?
Tough question. I'm conscious of time. So I just want to say, let's not forget what the NHRC did in West Bengal, whom they sent to West Bengal. They sent a team led by their own member, who was formerly the director of the IB. I don't need to say anything more than this. This was weaponization. The NCPCR came to Tamil Nadu, to a village called Michaelpatti, on an alleged complaint of a girl who had committed suicide because of being forced to change her religion, being the allegation. And they came in a whirlwind tour, one day, to investigate this, and they came with their findings. This didn't stop with that. They went and intervened in the Supreme Court, and their intervention is before the Supreme Court. With great respect, this joker of a chair, we know him well. We know in which bank he worked. We know how he got appointed. We know how the term was extended. We can go on. The sad thing is these institutions are precisely being used by these appointees who are BJP holders, ticket holders. And I'm going on record saying this because I heard this. You go to the NHRC website today, Amrita, you will see a wonderful picture of our NSRC sir with the Mr. Gilmore, the High Representative of the Human Rights Defenders of the European Union. It looks very grand. I met the person who accompanied him, and he told me, and I say it with fear and shame. He said that was a meeting where we heard BJP spokespersons talking to us. This is the person who accompanied him. I unfortunately don't want to mention his name. So this is very sad state of affairs we are in. So we really need to hold ourselves together against this weaponization that you're talking. But institutions, as institutions, will not work. They need to be trained before they are appointed. And I'll give you an example in Tamil Nadu. Everybody is very, very, very proud of Tamil Nadu. Ramesh Nathan, who works with Beena very closely, was with them for several years, known to all of you there, Anjali. Ramesh Nathan sends a complaint as Sasi, the organization belongs to the new SC/ST Commission of Tamil Nadu. And the SC/ST Commission says, sorry, brother, I can't take your complaint because it has not come from the victim. Where do you put these people? In which zoo do you put these people? These are the people who are appointed. His members are crying out to us in Tamil Nadu and saying we are never allowed to work with him. If you select judges like this, just because you want to show the world that you have an SC/ST commission in the state which we did not have, it will not work. They need to be trained and they need to have the humility to say, Anjali, please train us. Beena, please train us. Mani, please train us. And then send them into action. That's all I want to say.
Right. Thank you very much, Henri. And that sums up our in-depth analysis and deep dive into oversight commissions for today. But we will be again back next month in the last week with more commissions. And next time we'll pick up commissions which have been weaponized by this government. And we will hear from those. And maybe I want to end with a proposal that maybe from this conversation and the next one, we can actually evolve grounded voices principles for oversight commissions. Because I think what the commissions have forgotten, and which Henri said, is that you need to be grounded voices. You need to be voices for those at the margins. You can't tell someone that, oh, you're not the victim, and you're representing them. Try and understand that the victim is in a situation where they cannot even represent themselves. That's why there is civil society. That's why there are people. And therefore that needs to, I think we need to, just like the Paris principle, we need to have principles for oversight commissions as civil society, and maybe do an assessment on an annual basis of how each of them is functioning. So thank you very much. It's gone on for longer than expected because of the great and immense experience that actually each of you brings to the table, and all the best to all of you. And please keep carrying on the important work that you're doing, because we need to reclaim the institutions. So thank you very much and good night. And we will now be closing the room.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amrita. You've been fantastic. Your translations have been so great.